OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yeah, it's Friday morning and you're very welcome along. It's just gone 7:30. I hope this Friday morning is treating you well wherever you are. I hope you're ahead of schedule. Eoin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
How's life?
Very well. How are you keeping?
Flying it through All Ireland hurling final weekend. What other way would you be?
It's true. It's a fixture that's kind of lived up to the hype for the last couple of years, and when it comes to the semi-finals and the final, it's like there is a game that I know is going to be amazing and it's not going to let me down. So I think when you get the stories and the history of this fixture as well, and the recent history of this fixture, you've got people who are newly retired, and you get new nuggets from the likes of the inside of the Tipperary and the Kilkenny camp over the last 15 years with every passing day this week. So it's been a fantastic build-up, just a little bit too short. You'd like to have an extra week to kind of focus fully on the hurling next week and really get into the nuts and bolts of it, but there's still a couple of days to go, still a lot of matchups to be digested and all that sort of stuff. Exactly.
You'd be an expert. I would have no experience of being involved in an All-Ireland final, so you'd be an absolute expert in this, even from a fan's perspective. So we'll take your lead on that. Keep the powder dry for now. Save your excitement until Sunday. They hate each other is kind of the subcontext of this as well. So it'll be. I know we were talking to Stephen Kelly a couple of weeks ago about the Arsenal Tottenham thing. Tommy Walsh is going to be joining us a bit later on. I'll definitely be asking about that. So we'll, close proximity breeds a fair bit of tension, I suppose, the thing. So
yeah, it is something though that they both tapped into. They both love that tension, and it's something that'll be mentioned quite a bit, especially I'd imagine by Brian Cody this week. The sort of look at Tipperary now and everything they've done to hurt us in the past. Well, in actual fact, Kilkenny have caused them far more pain this century. It is something. I've got Jackie Tyrrell's column in front of me. It is something that he's written about in his book and stuff like that, where of course they had a natural hate for Tipperary, but it was very much in their interest to take that and
make a lie out of it.
Yeah, underline it and exactly, make a lie out of it, I think is actually the term he uses in the book. So it's fascinating. It's a very easy form of psychology for Cody and for Sheedy this week. Yeah,
it'll be great. There's some great pieces in it. We'll get to all that in just a few minutes as well. And your boy is clear for the All-Ireland final in the greatest, least surprise of all time.
What do you mean, my boy?
Stephen O'Brien is good to go.
You mean Kerry footballer Stephen O'Brien?
Kerry footballer Stephen O'Brien.
Yes, he's clear. Good to go. He's been cleared. His black card in Navan has been rescinded. So that's only 2 black cards.
This was like it was some sort of a comment yesterday from some Kerry official source or other. It's going to take 3 or 4 days, but we expect to get it done. And then it was done within a couple of hours.
Didn't see that comment.
Something from I know the Kerry County Board chairman was on Radio Kerry, I think, during the week. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we just won't mention his name.
Tim Murphy.
No, I mean the referee's name on the
David
show
Goff.
today. Just given there we go. Just given the amount of exposure there's been about it during the week, but he was on to discuss that and say how, which was repeated by Peter Keane, obviously later in the day, how the team aren't in the slightest bit concerned about David Goff being the manager, and he was hoping to dial down the conversation about it by going on local radio to have a conversation about it. But anyway, Kerry are fine with it. Everything's good in the world. But I think it was in the course of that interview he might have said about Stephen O'Brien that it was going to take a few days. But it seemed like, and it was pretty obvious, to be fair. I'm sure the committee sat down and said, right, let's review this thing. Let's have a look at the three black cards. Oh, okay, I see. Grant, he can play. I'm assuming it was a pretty clear-cut process.
I'd imagine so. I don't know I don't know who or when it came about, but obviously
last night.
So there you go. He's good to go, good to play. Jim Gavin said he's happy to see him play. I think Kerry fans will be happy to see him play.
Gavin said he's happy to see him play. He says that he wouldn't. He's not delighted to see him play. He says
that he wouldn't have liked to see anybody get suspended for an Ireland final for 3 black cards. So
that's fair enough.
Yeah, good to go.
Very good. Right, that is. Here's what's coming up on the show today between now and 9:30 for you. We're going to tell you what's happening in the back pages in just a couple of moments. Tommy Walsh is going to join us live in the studio. What a presence to have, I suppose, in the studio today, given the weekend that's in it. We're going to get Tommy's thoughts on all things to do with that All-Ireland hurling final and what it's like to have played in it for so many years and now to be watching on over the last couple of years. Peter O'Mahony has done a piece with myself and Alan Quinlan down at his beautiful home in Cork, and we'll be bringing that your way. It'll be worth hanging around for it about 8:30. Mike McCarthy is going to go deep on the depth chart. He's back to talk about the second row priorities for Ireland. 5 left now. and maybe they'll all travel to Rugby World Cup, so he'll talk about the second row. That is just at about 22:09. At 9 o'clock, we're going to talk all things Premier League. Nathan Murphy and Phil Egan are going to join us to look ahead to weekend 2 of the Premier League, so plenty of interesting stuff to talk about there, get their predictions as well, and Phil is going to tell us all about the sports news. So that's what's coming up. We do want to hear your comments. Anything you've got for us over the next couple of hours, please do keep them coming in. But right now it's time for the papers.
The Off the Ball Open tees off in Abu Dhabi this November 17th to 23rd. Join us with return flights from Dublin, 5 nights in a 4-star hotel, golf on 2 championship courses, Gala Awards dinner, Peter Lorry Golf Clinic and a live Off the Ball roadshow, all for just €1,750. Kevin Kilban and Kieran Donaghy will be there too. The Off the Ball Open, Abu Dhabi this November. Book by August 18th to avail of this early bird offer at CassidyTravel.ie. Deposit of €250 required. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, almost 7:37 on this Friday morning. We're going to kick you off with the Irish Daily Mail this morning. We're going to talk about the comments from Brian Cody here. I mean, read my lips. TJ's brilliant, but so are the rest, says Boss Cody. In no great surprise to anybody, Brian Cody backs all of his entire team as excellent players, and in doing so tries to take some of the heat off TJ Reid. Revealed the 560 grand a week cost of keeping Flop Sanchez at United. This is just a disgusting sum of money for a player that's obviously serving very little purpose for them. I mean, the only way to avoid something like this is to include some kind of very clear performance-related, even appearance-related clauses in players' contracts, and I'm sure the players' unions would balk at the very idea of it. But it's when you see something like this, they were never to know that he was going to have as little impact as he has done. But the fact that over £500,000 every week is just leaking out of that business with nothing coming back for it is astonishing.
Yeah, and you wouldn't mind too much if there was sort of a 1-year punt on Alexis Sanchez where it's like, okay, we're going to pay him $560,000 a week for 1 year as part of a 1-year deal, with perhaps an add-on of another year as an option on the contract, and we're going to take a 1-year chance. That was the only way we would have got him into the club, and it just seems now that it is something that they're stuck with. Like, we were having this conversation before we came on air. I don't subscribe to the idea that this was always a disaster from the start. He was Arsenal's best player. He was a fantastic goal scorer. It was an area that Manchester United wanted to strengthen in terms of goal scoring. The problem was that the position that he played just wasn't very suited to how Manchester United set up. Nobody was saying when Alexis Sanchez was playing that piano that time that this was a disastrous move. We were all saying that's a pretty embarrassing video, but nobody was saying that this is going to be a disaster. I think we've all been a little bit surprised by the level to which this has been a calamity. Maybe, okay, $560,000 would have raised eyebrows at the time. You're like, right, that's a lot of money, but today's market and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think we thought that he would be worth... I think he's just worth about $40,000 a week at the moment, if even.
Look, and if even, and like, it's just more. The thing that astonishes me about it is just the idea of any business. Like, think about any other industry where a business was saying, right, we're losing £500,000 a week on this one thing that we're getting absolutely no return from. Like, I just can't imagine it. Like, there's no business in the like £1 billion, £1 billion, euro businesses can't afford that kind of loss. I know football doesn't give a shit about money. I get that. Like, it's the amounts of money that they spend on players, they're astronomical. But at the same time, it's just like, so when they sit down at the end of every week or at the start of every week to discuss where the accounts are at and how they're spending and how they get more money into the business, they go, so yeah, we still have that leak of £500,000 there.
There's a massive hemorrhage in our company.
There is. I don't know. I don't know what you do. Do you sit down and say, I don't know. I'm sure he's delighted to sit there and at 30 years of age, I think, and sort of cream in the cash, and life is good, I'm sure, for Alexis Sanchez.
The rumour was that Roma would be willing to take him on loan and pay half of his wages.
You do that, go for it.
Well, Manchester United go for it, but if you're Roma...
But at this point, would you not just take any... whatever? Give me anything. You give me an offer.
$1,000 a week. Like, even if they offered to pay 100 grand of his wages a week.
Anything, just something to take the edge off.
Just take him at some point. But like, that leaves Roma with then €460,000, it leaves United with €460,000 a week to pay. This is not a good deal for any top club in Europe. I know they've got a couple of more weeks to make this thing happen if they want Alexis Sanchez. It's not a good move for anybody.
He's not also making any noises that suggest that he's like in any way uncomfortable with the idea of sitting around. Like, his agent isn't out saying, he really wants to get game time. They're all like sitting in clover. There was a clause, apparently, further clause in the contract that they would have had to pay another maybe $5 million, I think it was, if he had played a certain number of games over the course of the season, which clearly he's not going to threaten in any way, shape or form. That's Alexis Sanchez. Kerry's O'Brien wins appeal, writes Michael Clifford here, and is cleared for the final. That news about Stephen O'Brien.
The Irish Times leads with Jackie Tyrrell's column. The last line is the name of his column. I didn't know it was called the last line. Kilkenny to just edge it when the sparks stop flying. He does a comparison in the first couple of paragraphs between Bill Belichick and Brian Cody. He rightly says that when you get to the year 2099, that you'll look back on the great coaches from the last century, and chances are Bill Belichick will be held up as the NFL great and Brian Cody will be held up as the hurling great. Even though we're not even 20 years into the century, it's probably already done and dusted. Don't even bother trying if you want to get into that pantheon of greats right now. The other story here is 7 goals in a row. Callanan leading Tip from front and top. It's a story that's kind of covered across a few of the pages. I think Callanan's quotes must have been kept for this morning. There's nothing particularly interesting about Callanan is saying, but it's just the statistics that come up around Callanan, like 7 goals in a row. So literally 7 matches in a row scoring goals in, and the statistics are kind of absurd really. If he scores a goal this weekend, he goes level with Eddie Kerr on 35 goals in all-time hurling chat, which is a pretty good representation of Eddie Kerr, to be honest. That's, obviously, but when I say it's an absurd statistic, it's nothing to do with Callanan or nothing to do with Kerr. It's because they would be joint second behind Nicky Rackard. He's got 59.
That's insane.
I often think if I had a time machine, who would I go back and watch in the flesh? Turns out seeing goal machine Nicky Rackard would be one of the best places you could go in your DeLorean.
Who would it be?
I don't know really.
Across GA Sports for the weekend that's in it. You must be tempted.
Yeah, like that's right up there. Like, I mean, to see that in its pomp, to see that goal, that level of ridiculous goal scoring in its pomp, Rackard would be unbelievable. Like, it's just a statistic. I know it's been thrown out before. It's nothing.
How many games would he have played?
I don't know.
Like, it wouldn't have been. It was obviously not. That's just in the championship, is it?
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Bloody hell. He can't have played that many games. Like, obviously it's not that long ago that you could have won an All-Ireland in 3 or 4 matches.
Well, that's the thing. Like, maybe Leinster was particularly weak at that point or something. I don't know. I need to do a bit more of a deeper dive. I'm sure there's information. I'm sure people who are watching have actual information. Because I do recall the piece. I think it might have actually been Shane Stapleton writing the piece in the Sunday Independent a few months ago about Callanan, and obviously he had seen what Callanan was doing in the very early stages of this year's championship, and obviously Shane knew that this was going to be a thing come the end of the year. So I wouldn't put it past him to score 2 goals at the weekend or a hat-trick, and see he'll overtake Kerr and be in second. But 59.
It's inevitable that he will do it. It's incredible, and like for a player as well, that up to a couple of years ago, the general discussion about him was that he was a bit hot and cold. Like, for a player who's now
Callanan.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he's a bit hot and cold, and he's like scored 35 goals or whatever it is.
I think that's a generalisation of Tipperary as a whole and the team that came through in 2009. And that's why I think this is such a huge encounter for them on Sunday to actually get their 3rd All-Ireland medal. I think there's just something about the 2 versus 3 thing. 2, especially given how far apart they were from 2009 to 2016. Granted, I'm only talking about a very small amount of players who've actually been there for the last 10 years. But actually having a 3rd All-Ireland, 3-time All-Ireland winner, Seamus Callanan, sounds a hell of a lot better. And you can't say there was a fluke here and there. You would put him straight into the category of great when it comes to modern forwards.
And even when you talk about the pantheon of great managers like Liam Sheedy, who inevitably, if they win it, does his usual kind of, listen lads, I'd say it, I'm off.
Yeah.
You know, like in terms of he shoots, he scores ratio.
Well, yeah, it would put him into cult hero status.
The Irish Daily Mirror then, Chelsea striker Tammy suffers race hate from vile trolls. This is Tommy Abram, the young Chelsea striker who missed that penalty, of course, in the Super League final, Super Cup final during the week, and has come in for some pretty rotten, which have been printed by the newspaper here today, abuse after that. So it's shameful, and we'll keep an eye on it as the days and months unfold. It's pretty shitty thing for him to have to deal with, it has to be said. And also reflections there on Stephen O'Brien being cleared for the All-Ireland football final. And one story to mention, it's on the front of a bunch of these newspapers as well, including the Irish Daily Mirror. Cheap Shot Conor. This is the video that you've all seen online of Conor McGregor as Ciara Phelan and Colin Brennan right here. A man allegedly struck by Conor McGregor after refusing to taste his money, to taste his whiskey. They have quotes from him here, and it does seem as if he will face some minor charge for that.
The Irish Examiner this morning leads with Rugby at the Park. Talks progressing on Christmas Munster, Leinster clash at home of Cork GA, so Páirc Uí Chaoimh set to host Munster against Leinster on December 28th, the traditional Christmas fixture between the two sides. Final special, Derek McGrath leads a 10-page preview of Sunday's Tip Kilkenny hurling decider. You've got Coolest of Cats, TJ, bit of Doyle, bit of Shefflin. Jack Anderson is asking, is the current model of intercounty GA sustainable? You've got that news on Stephen O'Brien. And who'll reign in Spain? Dermot Corrigan on the return of La Liga tonight. Barcelona in action.
It seems like a pretty good idea to put rugby into Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yeah, definitely.
If you forget about any of the sensitivities, whatever, it's sweet ground.
Yeah, because the current arrangement is that Limerick gets all the good games, Cork gets the crap games. But actually you've got this much bigger and better stadium that can hold a hell of a lot more people in Cork.
Yeah.
Christmas time, like it's the one time where, not the one time, it's the time where you are most tempted to go and actually drive up the road, certainly from my perspective, go up to Limerick on whatever, since I'm down home, or whatever, the 27th, 28th, whenever that fixture tends to be home, because it's always in Munster. It tends to be around that time of year, and for Cork people now, that just makes it a far better option. And I think
the kickback, I wonder will the...
I don't think so. I think this is like one of the great assets that Munster rugby has. The dual city thing, it has been held up as a thing that's held them back for years, especially with two different training bases they have. They've addressed that, and of course that should never be the case. But when you've got two great stadiums in your province, why not use them? Why not use two massive fan bases you have?
More kickback from the GA community. That,
right, okay. I don't think so. That would be typical begrudgery. If there was a kickback from, like, what else is Páirc Uí Chaoimh going to be doing?
Untypical or typical.
Páirc Uí Chaoimh is going to be a lonely, desolate place on December 28th.
And isn't it brilliant that, like, for the ground that we've been discussing at this show over the last couple of months, about all the stories, particularly in the Irish Examiner as well, about the struggles that they have financially. I mean, this makes utter sense.
Yeah, completely. It's a no-brainer, to be honest. So hopefully it does get over the line and it does happen.
The Irish Sun then, a leading man, Harry, having a huge impact. This is £80 million signing steps up. It's Neil Custis. I don't know. It's a kind of an odd story to be put on the back page. It's just like Harry Maguire's having a good season so far after a game, and that he may actually, like, I mean, the conversation is this guy's going to change. He's such a great character. He's going to change the culture at Manchester United, and he's such a great player that he can impact things in the field. Like, this is the opposite of Alexis Sanchez. It turns out.
Harry Maguire's
after a game.
Yeah, he's probably going to look a hell of a lot better now because of the way Manchester United have failed. But I wonder if the transfer fee, not the transfer fee, but the timing of the transfer fee is something that might take a little bit of pressure off Harry Maguire, that they've had such a disastrous run of transfers. Harry Maguire is like, but I don't have to do that much to look like a bit of a better investment than, say, Alexis Sanchez.
Yeah.
But what you mentioned there, the impact that he has in the dressing room, that's something that's been mentioned quite a lot this week. Not so much mentioned in the build-up to the signing. Everybody was talking about the skills he'd bring to the side, or would he fit into that defence. But now this week, since that performance last week, it's the maturity of Harry Maguire, the mentality of Harry Maguire, how he's going to change the culture of a dressing room. And by all accounts, people who are well in the know, he is the sort of character that is just a born leader, and he will bring that to the United dressing room regardless of the talents he'll bring. But clearly it seems that the talents he'll bring are also exceptional. I think it's been a very promising start, but at the same time you're judging it on one spot of information where he's up against Tammy Abraham.
We'll see how that pans out, but yeah, on the face of it, so far, good business. And black in business is the other story here in the Sun. Jason Byrne writing about Stephen O'Brien being cleared to play for Kerry.
Same pun on the back page at the start. Blackened again they go with. Keane's delight as O'Brien's get green light to face the Dubs. Volley of abuse for Irish umpire. This is one that came up yesterday. So this is Fergus Murphy on the end of another barrage from abuse from Aussie tennis bad boy Nick Kyrgios yesterday. So Kyrgios stormed off the court without permission at the Cincinnati Masters to smash 2 rackets in his latest bizarre meltdown after a heated clash with Murphy. He then branded umpire Murphy the worst effing ref ever on his return and spat in the direction of the Irish official after his defeat. He won the first set, but reignited his running feud with Murphy in the second when he claimed the shot clock started too early. Absolute rubbish. Disgrace. Get me some footage of Rafa playing that quick. So this is one of the weirdest beefs we've had in our sport. Fergus Murphy versus Nick Kyrgios.
Isn't it bizarre how the officialdom have not stepped in with Nick Kyrgios and said, listen dude, cool your jets. You can't continue this level of personal diatribe against an umpire. We just won't stand for it. If you do it again, you're getting a 6-month ban.
Just to continue this quote, get me some footage of Rafa playing that quick. If you can find any of that, I'll shut my mouth and never speak again. I guarantee you'll never find none of that. None of it. Why do I always have problems with this potato in the chair?
Woof.
Nick Kyrgios, I used to like you.
Wow.
You really hurt my feelings this morning.
As in, he's pretty inactive?
Of course
or did he mean...
He means inactive, of course.
He's a paddy and all we do is eat spuds.
He has no idea that he is Irish, I'd imagine, but let's take this as a nationalistic insult.
This has been such a personal attack over a long period of time. There's no way he hasn't Wikipedia'd Fergus Murphy or certainly done some Googling about him. Right? Like, he knows where he's from.
But yeah, to be honest, you're probably right. But does he put the potato together with Ireland? I'm not so sure. Like, it's actually remarkable. Worst effing ref ever. The worst ref in the game. The worst. Hands down. Every single time I play, he's doing some stupid shit. Every time. Fool. You're an effing tool, bro. And then spat in his direction, refusing to shake his hand. Don't know, but I used to
spat in his like.
I'm disappointed in you, Nick Kyrgios. That's all I'm going to say. I used to like.
That story was that he got fined. Was that it? I might have totally misrepresented what you were saying.
There is.
But I think I did see in one of the newspapers.
I don't think it's reported here.
Ban him. Like, this is like constant abuse against an umpire. Ban him.
The water, but did you see the bottle incident then? Or what was it that he threw at the umpire? And he's like, it slipped out of my hand.
Ah, come on.
Was it a bottle? I can't.
Come on.
I saw the footage of it yesterday. This is, I don't know. There is definitely an element of Nick Kyrgios that loves to be the villain. And that is something that I've started to realise recently. I kind of had sympathy for Nick Kyrgios in recent times, whereas like clearly he's just an angry guy and he just gets way too passionate most of the time. But I think he actually realises that so much, and his comments around Wimbledon saying, well, I was down the pub last night. What a lad you are, Nick. You are a legend, Nick Kyrgios. You were down the pub the night before a tennis game. Big man you are, like hurling abuse of this umpire consistently. It's definitely gone beyond the point of being like, this is a character. Just a bit of a dick.
No, but it's really personal. Like he knows he's from Ireland, right? So don't use the potato thing. Do you know what I mean? If you have any kind of a...
to be honest with you, I don't get that insulted about that, to be honest. But I'm not insulted by the story. I'm just like, come on.
He was fined about €100,000 and could be banned from tennis.
Is that the line, right?
He's like, if that results in him getting banned, he's an idiot. Like, he's an absolute idiot. It should.
Yeah, well, it absolutely should. If tennis have any sort of value of their own umpires, then this will probably result in a ban.
The Guardian this morning, it's all about the Ashes here. Ashes heat Archer ready to return fire after Australia blitz. This is the final test at Lord's. England put up 258 total. Australia currently 30 for 1. And it's all about the pitch and the weather is the short story about the 4-day final Ashes test, as it will be due to the weather and whether or not England can make that pitch bounce on. That's the big question. And Jofra Archer, I think, is their big hope in terms of trying to do that, but we're in the happily, I think, because it seems to have gone on for about 2 years, the final dying embers of the Ashes.
You think it's done?
Well, it's sorry, I'm just talking about the 2019 in Scotland.
I thought you were like, I thought that was
this particular match.
I thought it was a particularly hot take. Actually, we need to cancel the Ashes. Front page of the Herald Sports section. Poole will pay price. Richard Dunn says squad depth will come back to haunt Klopp's side. Got Clash of the Titans and Croker. O'Brien's clear to play final. And Kieran Whelan saying Kerry already at it. I'm going to entertain this for like 1 second. Now that Goff has been officially confirmed as the final, we can expect some Kerry voices now to endorse his appointment in the coming days. Watch this space. In many ways, what Kerry have achieved here is a great act of double bluff Q-tourism. In the most unoriginal take ever written. Like, no matter what happens, there will be. It's going to be. That's the disappointing thing for me, is that there's going to be discussion about it afterwards. Like, no matter what happens, any small, the most minute of like wrong calls, which inevitably there are over the course of a game, we'll spend a long time looking at them. The sub-headline on the piece is referee claims are double bluff Q-tourism, but Dubs must work on their first half effort. So that's going to be, I think that sub-headline kind of sums up, there's all this thing going on, but also there's an actual football match to preview.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's hurling weekend, Adrian. I've got a couple of more newspapers. Daily Telegraph goes with in with a shout, broad strikes to dismiss Warner, but England's fragile batting fails again. The London Times goes with England fight back, Bairstow 50, and key wicket of Warner keep hosts in the game after collapse. And then finally for now, the Racing Post goes with BHA chief Rustin Pointer to harsher whip bans, and Baker issues call for bad apples to be brought to account. Meanwhile, no end to heartache for troubled Terriers. It's Huddersfield against Fulham tonight at 7:45 in the Championship.
There's one story in Gaelic Life that I want to just mention as well, that an interesting development from Fermanagh football with this story this morning, that Ryan McMenamin, Paul McIver and Joe McMahon have moved a step closer to becoming the new Fermanagh management team, which would be box office.
Give me the names again.
Ryan McMenamin, Paul McIver and Joe McMahon. With
McMenamin as the main man.
It seems to be, yeah. So Rory Gallagher had endorsed McMenamin already, so it seems like he's the one who's kind of leading the charge.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we talk about the role of coaches in the backroom team and how influential they've been over the past few years, particularly when it comes to, say, Donegal this year. But yeah, when it comes to Fermanagh and what they've done, it's all been about Rory Gallagher, and McMenamin's got little credit for that. The thing is, we just haven't seen McMenamin in too much coaching action before that, and that is why someone like Rochford got a lot of credit this year with Donegal. So maybe he has, behind the scenes, been doing a hell of a lot of work and been absolutely vital to what Fermanagh have been doing. He's going to step up, take the main role, and I think it's a good appointment. I think
interesting times.
Like, it's certainly somebody who knows how to win an Ulster title.
I want to see Ryan McMenamin's Fermanagh take on Paul Galvin's Wexford.
Yeah, that'd
be cracking.
And the boring headlines of McMenamin gets Galvin again, even though Fermanagh are a clearly superior team to Wexford. But yes, that is of course the wildcard.
I think we're going too deep on that one. Not even worth 20 grand a week, says Ryan Smart on Facebook in relation to our discussion about Alexis Sanchez. Worth nothing a week if he's really not doing anything. I think that's the short story on him. And Dara on YouTube, not quite sure what this is in reference to, but much like when Ger faced off against Matt Cooper.
Oh, push-ups. Did you not see this video? They did push-ups up on the balcony upstairs. It's available on YouTube. Right. Very entertaining.
Recently?
A couple of years ago, a few years ago. Right. I think it was around 2013, 2014.
Would AB face Eoin in a press-up charity, all the money going to a social justice warrior cause of AB choice, like carbon-neutral avocados? No, I'm not going to be doing any press-ups.
I'm up for it.
We can come up with another challenge.
No,
I'm up
let's
for
do that.
I doing press-ups.
Do I get, How
many press-ups can you do just as a...
I don't know, 12.
Grand, I'm out. Let's come up with something else. Right, Tommy Walsh is in the house. We're going to talk hurling. It's the weekend that's in it. It's almost 8 o'clock. We're delighted to have with you. You with us even. And if you've got good comments that don't have to put Eoin or myself to the pin of our collar physically, because I'm certainly not up to it, please do keep them coming in. We'll bring them to Tommy, and we'll have Mike McCarthy a bit later to talk on the rugby. We'll have Nathan and Phil to discuss all things Premier League, and a special feature as well with Peter O'Mahony. So that's all coming your way between 9 and half 9. Next up, Tommy Walsh in the house, and to take us there, it's Kilkenny's Brian Cody taking a trip down memory lane with Maura Tressa.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Let's face it, the Irish summer has serious commitment issues. It's always late, disappears for weeks at a time, and consistently breaks its promises. But not us. At Electric Ireland, we're committed to giving you an 8.5% saving on your gas and electricity year after year after year after year. Visit electricireland.ie/join for the kind of commitment you deserve.
Estimated annual bill €1,736. Average consumption, urban 24-hour, discounted unit rate, standing charge, PSO levy and carbon tax. Residential, dual fuel, direct debit and online billing. Terms and conditions apply. See electricireland.ie/EAB. Rates at 1st of April 2019. Subject to change.
OTB AM.
Look, I mean, things, we were 21 at the time. We were lucky that we had won the All-Ireland final, so I mean, I hadn't won a National League, so I'd love to win one of them as well. We had those opportunities, thanks be to God. I'm not much difference in the fact that I wanted to just be, play hurling, play with my club, play with my county, and try and be successful. And thanks be to God, I tasted a bit of that as well, and I'm still not doing much different, to be honest.
I'd say you probably didn't see this though.
See what though?
Being a manager for as long as you have and being as successful, you're the person that everybody wants to emulate.
Not a chance did I see this. No, it never occurred to me that I would ever be managing Kilkenny in the slightest. I was involved in my club and all that kind of stuff, but managing Kilkenny never entered my mind at all until eventually it did.
And obviously, never mind not coming into your mind, but being as successful as you are, I mean, people often wonder, people ask me, what's Brian Cody like? And I say, he genuinely loves hurling, and to be still involved. You probably didn't see that either the first day you took the managing mantle up.
I just took on the job. It was a while ago now, obviously, and as regards time frame to stay in it, I had none in my mind. But the years just seemed to go ramble on one into the other, and I find myself still doing it. But don't feel any different, and the years flew by, and it's great to have that opportunity to be able to do it.
And your favourite TV show when you were 21 was Kojak.
Are you serious? My goodness me. Was it really? I think I just like it. Like I still deal with all these reports. I just make it up as I go along and say whatever comes into my head.
Kojak. Tommy Walsh, how are you getting on?
Yeah, good, Adrian.
Thanks a million for coming in.
Yeah, no problem at all.
He's like, he goes on and on and on and on, and I don't think people go too deep with the obituaries about Brian Cody, because that would be just crazy, but like, he's close to the peak of his powers again. I mean, if he ever waned.
Yeah, and like some guys, they like to maybe finish at the top or go out the top of their careers, maybe win an All-Ireland and go. Like we seen Liam Sheedy when he won the All-Ireland 2010. That was it. He kind of went to the top of the mountain, and he was getting out of there and maybe to pursue other avenues that he wanted to pursue. But Brian Cody only has one ambition, and that's to be involved in the game first and foremost. I had experience with him from primary school, and as regards, he was the primary school coach, teacher in St. Patrick's de la Salle in Kenny City, big city school, for so many years. And when I was growing up through the primary school ranks, he was there every day in the sideline. Anytime we played St. Patrick's de la Salle, in the same way he runs up and down the sideline now, just as passionate, just as hungry to win games. So I think that's the reason he's lasting so long. That's the reason he's not there to first and foremost win All-Ireland medals. He's there first and foremost because he loves being there. He's often been asked a question from Maura Trassa and many other interviewers over the years, like, does he feel the pressure, does he feel the stress? He doesn't. And looking at him on the sideline, you say that guy is worked up, and he's probably not
spitting on the hands, and he's
and really into it, and like Davy Fitz, really, really passionate.
It's different from being stressed, though, isn't it? Like, it's a different kind of you're in the middle of the game, you'd want to be a stone to not be passionate about it at that point. But I think, like, because even it's something Derek McGrath touches in his Irish Examiner column today about the cool, calm, like, determined, planned, like, there's a calmness about, I suppose, that maybe he didn't always have from day one, but that comes with your 78th All-Ireland final week, I presume.
78 is, oh my God. But he's just comfortable in his own skin. He's comfortable with his decisions. He knows that you make decisions and you can't base it on hindsight. Like, we've the best pundits around the country that can call it as after the game. But when you're involved in making decisions, you have to call it before the game. And often you will get it wrong as well, and if you're not comfortable with that, I think that's where the stress and the worry comes from. I think you have to be able to say to yourself, I'm going to go with my gut feeling, I'm going to go with my stomach on this. If it goes wrong, that's grand, I live with that. And I think the managers that don't last, and the managers that can only keep it going for a certain amount of years, are the lads that make the decisions, and afterwards, if they lose the game, possibly regret, I should have done this, I should have done that. You just have to go with it. And if it works out, it works out, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and look forward again to the next day. So I think that's one trait he definitely has. He fully believes in his own ability.
Do you think he cares about the idea of being the best manager of all time? The idea of just creating this team, your team, this team, whatever the next team may be, if he hangs around for another period of years, and just the greatness that they bestow on the world of hurling, the greater picture?
I don't think so. For the simple reason is it kind of came to light there during the week, a few newspaper articles, that this guy had a very successful career as a hurler, and he had bad injuries with his knees. And I'd say it probably didn't sit well with him. Like, he finished up earlier than he probably would have wanted. I'd say he would have loved him to stay hurling when he was 40, 45, but he couldn't do it with the injuries. He had bad old knees. And I reckon that he saw that, like, the joy he would have got out of his own career. Once it's over, it's over. And, like, what joy do you get out of people saying you're a great hurler, you're a great this back in the past? There's no joy to be got out of that. Yes, it's nice for people to say that, but that energy, that excitement that you feel before a match, and that is gone. So I'd say when he became manager, he realised this, and he's learned the lesson from his own career that, right, say after 2014 All-Ireland, 15 All-Ireland, when we had massive retirements the year before, he won an All-Ireland that no one thought he was going to win, and people thought, now is the time for Cody to go. He's done it with the players he had over the 10-15 year period. Now he's done it with a new bunch of players. He will go down as the greatest GA manager of all time. But I'd say he had a chat with himself, and his wife Elsie is just as big into it as he is. Said, do you know what? I go off here now. Where am I going to get my buzz next? Where's that feeling of championship going to come? And I'd say that has to be a factor, because like Liam Sheedy went out with the top in 2010. Drawn back, 9 years later, he had a very successful career in the bank. He's had a very successful career on the Sunday game. He's done a few other things inside the GA and the Irish Sports Council, but the draw of the sideline brought him back. And I think probably Brian just learned that from his own career.
He's like famously, you've spoken about it before, like he's not necessarily the sort of fella who brings you terribly close. As one of his players, he'll sort of keep that distance. Since you've retired and the years afterwards, have you had much cause to be in contact with him, or is he the sort of guy that you'd be dropping the odd text, or is there any of that kind of relationship, or is it, listen, that's done now, best of luck with the rest of your life, we'll see you down the road?
Well, I'm in the media now, so he's definitely not going to talk to me now.
Blocked your number.
So, to be honest, I wouldn't even be comfortable talking to the players at the moment, because I'm involved with yourselves.
What about your brother?
What? Yeah, I wouldn't ask him anything. You know, I was trying to trick and joke with him last night. I was saying, gee, I couldn't believe you picked this lad for the final, you know, just pretending. But he wasn't buying it, obviously, like, but... No,
you wouldn't. There wouldn't be any sort of. There's no sort of. You know, because obviously he has to have a certain type, or certainly as he sees it, has to have a certain type of relationship with you as you're a player, and it's not as if then once you're retired, that all falls away, the cloak falls off, and he's like, listen, you know, it's been great, and we'll meet up and we'll have a coffee every now and then, or like that's. There's just nothing. Even if you weren't in the media, it seems like that's.
Well, it just, when would you meet him? Like if I did meet him, I would have a grand hurling chat. I've met him. I have. Listen, all joking aside, I've met him at 1 or 2 games between Fitzgibbon and that. Brilliant hurling chat. Brilliant. You know, like I would have had a good relationship with Brian. Like, in regards. Besides, like, you know, I know he's a tough man and that, but he loves the crack. Like, he loves laughing and joking.
Does he? Yeah.
He does. He genuinely does. Yeah. And you'll often see that side of him after the All-Ireland, from then until Christmas. Yeah. Meet him, you have great fun. He loves people's company as regards laughing and joking. But you see, at the back of his mind, he has to have that authority. He has to have set them standards that he must make big decisions when it comes to it. And like, obviously, when you're gone out of the game, like, just social media and that is so strong in today's world that, like, if Brian Cody is to give his opinion in a chat, like, the first thing that you're going to do is you'll be talking to a lad down the pub. Just talking to Cody there, he thinks this lad is,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's the way, and you have to understand that. So, like, I remember one time we're up at an Ireland-Poland. We're playing up in Croke Park. I think the game was 4-3 at the end. And there was a huge Polish, because the Polish, there was so many of them here, there was a huge crowd at the game. And remember, we were in Jury's Hotel for a few pints before the game, and we seen Steve Bruce across the at the bar. And to be honest, to this day, I don't even know, was he drinking. And but we were talking to, you know, all your friends when you go home, and they're just saying, "Jeez, met Steve Bruce there in Jury's. Oh, he was lorrying down pints." Yeah. And, like, that's the way it goes. So you have to be careful.
Keep out of it, like, almost. Yeah,
I think so.
Dermot McGrath writes a lot about him, and him coming in to De La Salle, actually, and probably giving a few team talks back in the day, and Liam Sheedy coming as well, and their different styles and that kind of thing. He talks about, like, the impact that he had, and even with Sheedy, he talks about John Milan, who's his brother-in-law, referencing the speech that Sheedy gave as the best motivational speech that he'd ever heard. Like, and it seems like both of them, Sheedy and Cody, almost come from the same school, almost in that regard. Like, that there's a basic but strong message that they'd like to deliver and to lead into a game.
Yeah, and they're both brilliant at getting the best out of people. And Liam Sheedy has often referenced that he loves dealing with people and getting the best out of them. That's his number one motivation, and I would have came across that in the Bank of Ireland as regards staff that have dealt with him. I haven't dealt directly with him myself, but I know a lot of people that have, and they love him. Just think he's awesome, and really gets the best out of him. And you go back, I think the two of them as well, you could compare them. I think the two of them are psychologists. they just know how to rub people up the right way. And you go back to Sheedy's interviews back in the league, he will never doubt this Tipperary team. We've heard that from the Sunday game pundits from last year, that he just thinks these guys are the bee's knees. I suppose he was lucky enough they got him on the inter-county kind of manager in regards to minor. They won a minor All-Ireland for him, some of these players, so he's probably going to be forever indebted to them guys. But go back to his comments in the early rounds of the league. He said the one thing people might question was, I think, was it their work rate, the Tipperary supporters. He was saying the fans, and he was saying that's not going to happen, like they're going to go to the ends of the earth. And he was nearly kind of saying to the players in a public forum that, listen, as this is what you have to do. And they have not let him down since. From that very first league game when Shamie Callan was chasing guys from 30-40 yards, they have kept that going, and it's no fluke that they're in All-Ireland now.
One last one, Cody, before we flag the death out of it, but is he more likely to leave after Kilkenny win in All-Ireland or after they lose in All-Ireland?
I don't know. I don't think that will come into it. I think it'll just come into it maybe 10 years down the line, maybe when he gets just too old for it, possibly. Like, say, Alex Ferguson. I have a feeling something like that will happen, where Alex Ferguson, if we go back and look at when he retired first, out probably at the top, and suddenly realised, you know what, I'm young enough to stay going at this. I love it. I'm good at it. Let's keep it going. I think Cody will stay going until he can't do it no more.
You just said 10 more years.
What?
You said 10 more years just there. Is that what you're expecting?
I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what age he is now, but I'd say
also wouldn't be surprised, right? Like, it's
no.
One of the newspapers makes the point this morning that he's, you know, the way like when people get a bit older or whatever, they can lose some of their aura or whatever it might be. Even physically, your height diminishes over the course. But whoever it was making the point was like, this guy seems to be getting like bigger and bigger. You know, like his persona or his aura grows and grows. Like, you almost wouldn't be surprised to see him go until he's like in his early 80s.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that'd be some achievement in fairness. But isn't a lot will be to do with winning as well. Like, you know, when if he goes a couple of years without winning an All-Ireland final, there's massive, you know, pressure in that job, and people, you know, will start talking, and, you know, as long as he's thereabouts winning or in All-Ireland finals, you know, he will be there. But I'm sure, like, you know, if it goes a couple of years without him winning All-Ireland, I'm sure he'll start wondering, you know, will I stay going, or is it better off not to stand out at this stage? So I think he sets high standards for himself, so as long as he keeps them high standards going, he'll be happy enough to stay there.
The highest. Who's been the manager of the year for you so far, Sheedy or Cody?
Like, whoever wins Sunday.
Pre that,
I don't want to be. I don't think you can separate him, because Sheedy has brought a team that many people thought, like Ger Loughnane wrote him off last year, I think it was, that they were finished. They didn't win a game in the Munster round robin. Most of their main players were hitting the 30 years of age mark. We're not in the old format of 4 games a year and you win an All-Ireland. We're now into, if either of the teams if Tipperary were to win the All-Ireland this year, they've won 8 games. Well, they've played in 8 games, championship games, with huge intensity. So I think what Sheedy has done has been remarkable in freshening up these guys and getting them to believe. Also, the question marks were put to Tipperary was, like, when things got tough, would they be able to win the match? And that we all knew how brilliant they were as hurlers, but when it got intense and you had to get down and dirty, would they be able to win a match? They proved that the last day. And I think the last 20 minutes against Wexford could be the greatest 20 minutes of these guys' careers, because if they were to go on and win an All-Ireland this time, I think it'll be referenced for many, many years, the character of these Tipperary guys. Towards, if they had to bow down in the semi-final against Wexford, everyone would be saying the other, that when it was put up to them, they weren't able to answer. And that was fine when the game was grand and open, but when it got down and dirty, they weren't able to answer the questions. So I think what Sheedy has done, as regards the character even of these guys, of the perception of them out there now, is just so much different than before. And Cody then has... Now, the only thing I would say about Brian Cody and his management team, like, he has always said that he has brilliant players at his disposal, and I know you can't compare him to previous generations, but the forwards that they have are exceptional, and I'm sure any county in Ireland would love to have the 6 forwards Kilkenny have. So like, he's not managing guys that, you know, are 6th or 7th down the pecking order.
Yeah, they're no chumps.
These are a good team.
When you look at that Tipperary team, and especially the crews that have been there from 10 years ago, and they have 2 All-Ireland medals in their back pocket, is it a bit harsh to say that it's an underachievement unless they get to that 3rd All-Ireland medal? Because it seems that they are good enough to have the 3-time All-Ireland winner tag beside them.
Yeah, they're definitely good enough to have 3 All-Ireland medals beside them, beside their names. I wouldn't think if you win 1 All-Ireland medal, I think you're not underachieving. It's such a hard thing to do. It's just so difficult. And when you win, like as Limerick won last year, when you're looking back over the winter and looking back maybe this year over that championship, it's easier to say back, yeah, listen, we were the better team in that. But there's so many instances where you could have been out of that championship. And go back to Limerick last year, they could have been out of that championship a good few times, up to the last puck of the game. If someone had got a flick on Joe Canning's long free, a goal, Limerick were gone. So I think we can't underestimate how bloody difficult it is to win a championship, and especially now when there's about, I suppose, 7 teams that anyone can beat anyone. So I'd see 2 All-Ireland medals as a massive achievement and a massive haul.
And that's probably part of it as well, the coming off the highs of those years and the effort that goes into those 2 All-Ireland wins. That's why we've probably seen a bit of a diminishing return from Tipperary immediately afterwards, and it takes them a couple of years to recharge themselves like they have done this year.
Yeah, and I remember when they won the All-Ireland 2017, they were flying it again. And I was at the game they played against Dublin. It could have been an All-Ireland quarter-final up in Thurles. And they played the game so beautifully that day. They were flicking the ball here, flicking the ball there, putting the balls in the back of the net. They ran up a massive score and beat Dublin quite convincingly. And I said to whoever was beside me, it wasn't my mother or father or Marlies, that they will rue this, because you will not get away with that lovely hurling when you get to the latter stages against the best teams, because they will assault you. They won't give you a second. The minute you go to flick that ball, they will be on top of you. And that's what happened. I think it was Galway then went on and beat them in the All-Ireland semi-final. Towards this year, it was the complete opposite. They were playing one of the games, one of the round robin games anyway, and they were winning it well. I was at the game, and Liam Sheedy, they were winning it well, and Liam Sheedy, someone did something like that up in the forward line, one of their forwards. Sheedy went down and went through him, and just was not accepting that they were going to the 75th minute or 76th minute, whatever it was, with full-blooded intensity, no showboat, nothing like that. You play the game as fast and as hard as you can, and now you see the benefits of it. When the questions were asked in the semi-final against Wexford, because what they done against Wexford was Chin put that ball in the back of the net, and they were 5 or 6 points up, down a man. Like, I couldn't see any way back for that Tipperary team, but they grounded it out and came away with a victory. And it goes back to them little things that Sheedy was after kind of investing in them in the early parts of the year. So,
what's your take then on this weekend? How are you seeing it, or where is it going to be won and lost?
I think the both half back lines, Adrian, is going to be massive. We've seen in the semi-final Kilkenny's half back line, they really in the second half closed it down, and anytime Nash went to give his puck outs, Harnedy and these guys were doing their diagonal runs, but the Kilkenny backs were just there, read the game brilliantly, the half back line in midfield. So I think, and the Tipperary, we know what their half back line is like, you know, 3 of the best hurlers that are in Ireland. You have the 2 brothers, Ron and Pádraig, and you have Brendan Maher, the man marker as such, kind of reinvented since he done the cruise ship. Probably a lesson to every young hurler in Ireland, what you can do after a big injury. And you know, it's funny enough that we're up here and off the ball. I'd say a couple of weeks after he'd done that cruise shit, we did a morning interview with Nathan over in it was the Today FM Championship Sunday morning. I was sitting beside Brendan doing that for possibly an All-Ireland semi-final, and you know, and I was here, this guy's going to have some road back. And by God, he came back. And look at him now, like, it's brilliant. So I think where's going to be won or lost, I think fitness-wise and speed-wise, there's not much difference in these two teams. I think character-wise, the ability to come back, the ability to stick in, these two teams this year, there's not much of a difference. So I think it's going to come down to their skill on the day, and I think their ability to bypass, whether that's over the half-back line or play it short, will be the winning and losing of this game.
Yeah, like the matchups are fascinating. We have good chats about them. I know that Sheahan and the lads on the hurling show yesterday as well got right stuck into it. Colin Fennelly is one bit of a head scratcher maybe from a Tipperary point of view. Like, how do they plan for a player like Colin Fennelly, given his physicality and pace? He's got that combination that's tough to deal with. Yeah, well,
I think it goes back to the unit, the six backs. We often heard in our dressing room, like JJ Delaney, he would never really let it be said that you marking one guy. Right. It was all E together, and he learned that from a guy before him, Peter Barry. When JJ was a young fella, it probably served him right until he finished. Peter Barry told him, like, don't be worried, I'll always be there for you. And it's easy to say that, but Peter was always there for JJ and the rest of us, and JJ held that true to the rest of his career. And the young fella or whatever was coming in, JJ would always say to him, listen, don't be worried, I'll be there for you. And I think that's the key thing for the guys against Colin Fennelly, because if they mark Colin Fennelly as a unit, it will be much easier than on your own. We saw in the football last week, Mayo put one of the best footballers in Ireland on the King Khan, and you said, listen, if anyone is to mark him, Lee Keegan will mark him. But 2 chances, 2 goals. And that is no disrespect to Lee Keegan. I think that goes down to when you're marking the top guys, you need the boys around you to help you out. And I think, that'll be the case.
So, like the name that's been mentioned in terms of a man-marking job is Barry Heffernan, I think. Is that something then that Tipperary you're looking at as to how much we can help this guy out in terms of dropping men back perhaps behind the full back line, or whatever they may do when the ball is in the air especially?
Yeah, I wouldn't see Barry Heffernan as a man marker as such. I'd see him as a ball player. Good man from Nina. They've done well recently, getting to county finals and that, and he's been one of their main players. But I think Barry Heffernan is more a guy you're taught from a young age, defenders, get out in front. He's that type of player. He wants to get on the ball all the time. So whoever it is, Barry Heffernan, James Barry or Seamus Kennedy, one of them is going to be marking him, you'd imagine. They'll hardly put over Cathal Barrett on him. And I reckon it's just going to have to defend like a unit. Like you said, Eoin, I don't think it's that unnatural to this tip back line. Like Pádraig, Ronan Maher, they never depended on speed or man marking abilities. Theirs was reading of the game, dropping back in the pocket, picking up ball, clearing ball. Their way of marking guys is, I'm going to win more balls than you. And I think that's the way that they will set out to mark Colin Fennelly. I don't think there'll be a man marker as such.
Jackie was in with Eoin during the week and he was talking about Adrian Mullen. I think assassin might have been the word that he used in relation to him. What's so special about this guy? Like it seems like in the way that TJ is for the senior hurler of the year, that a good performance at the weekend, decent performance, will see him win the young player of the year award. What's so special about him, and like how again do Tipperary plan for him?
Yeah, well he'll probably be out on the wing, so he's going to be on one of the Mars, like, so I don't think
maybe.
Yeah, possibly Ronan Maher. It depends on what to do with Wally. Like, if Wally's out in the half-back line, they'll probably need, I don't think they'll put Brendan Maher on Wally. So I would be expecting the opposite. I'd say Brendan Maher could be on Adrian Mullen.
Right.
And I'd say Ronan Maher, because Ronan Maher is very good in the air, as we've seen in the semi-final.
On Fennelly?
No, on Wally.
Right, okay, yeah.
On the half-back line. Okay. That's the way I'd see it. Listen, you don't know, but I think that's the way I'd be doing it anyway, because Walter is brilliant in the air, like, and he's at the top of his game at the moment. But Adrian Mullen, the top class players, they always seem to have space. You don't know how they have it, they just do. He has pace, he has power, he has the hurling. So what makes him stand out? Just everything, really. There's no one thing. The only thing about it is he's young, so they will look at maybe getting in his face in the first few minutes and maybe putting them off. But while he's so young, he's so much experience. He's the club hurler of the year. And what would I put it down to? Just brilliant hurler. His brother's a brilliant hurler, Darren Mullen, one of the greatest sidesteps in the game. Ever since he was minor, he's a half-back. Like, there was 4 of them on the Club All-Ireland winning team, so there's talent in the family. Their mother's a Fennelly. So it's just in him, like, you know. He
Good
just has
genes.
it. Good genes, in fairness, yeah. And it always counts.
So, like, TJ was the other thing that came up with Jackie, and he's sort of talking about him, has been in the conversation. He wouldn't commit to, despite being pushed to commit whether it would be himself or Henry. Like, he was talking about, he's now in the conversation for the greatest of all time, and if he goes ahead and wins this weekend, and the season that he's having, like, obviously a guy that you would have soldiered with for years, what's the same question about him, like, what's so special about him, and, like, you know, I suppose particularly what he's done over the last couple of years when a lot of you lads sort of left the scene, the way that he's stood up has been remarkable.
It has. And, you know, where does he sit? I think there's the three top dogs of Kilkenny hurling. There's Kerr, DJ and Henry. And I think we'll have to make that a 4 now. And that's without question of a doubt. And I wouldn't have any doubts about it at all. He is in that top 4. And I wouldn't rate any of them above each other. I think they're all brilliant in their own rights. I obviously haven't seen Kerr a whole lot, bar some old video footage. But, you know, by talking to the older generation, like, and they would have seen Henry and DJ as well. Unbelievable. But TJ, he's definitely the greatest man I've ever seen in the air. Like, usually with a forward, if you don't want to play the ball, you know, you can stop him catching the ball. As all you because you're behind him, you have to imagine. So you can see everything. He can't see you. So you can stick in your hurl at the last second, flick the ball, you can put in your hand, whatever you want. But with TJ, no matter what you do, he seems to be still able to catch the ball. He's nearly unmarkable in the air. Why is that? I think a couple of years ago, around 2014, it was 2012 actually, he hurted his knee in the All-Ireland final against Galway, and I think it was his knee cap, so he had to go off and get big operation and spent a lot of time in the gym. And from then on, he was still suffering a little bit in 2013, the kind of after effects of that injury. But then from 14 on, he just turned into this absolute monster and lives in the gym now. His work rate went through the roof. So TJ in his earlier years wouldn't have always been known. He was a brilliant hurler and could make the ball talk, but he wouldn't have been known as one of the workers on the team. Now you nearly say he's like Henry grew into it. TJ is nearly the best worker on that Kilkenny team. So when you have your best hurler doing that, well, sure, anything can happen. But what makes him stand out, I think, his ability to win his own ball. He was never the fastest either as regards 10-yard bursts, but has done, by all accounts, incredible footwork and incredible speed work in the gym and with the strength and conditioning coaches, because now you see him in a ruck and 2 seconds later he's after doing a shimmy this way, shimmy that way, back and back maybe, and suddenly he's in 5 yards of space. So I think his attitude to his fitness and strength, along with his ability to win the ball, makes him stand out.
Brendan Maher might be an option. We keep going back to him, but he could be an option to pick him up as well. Like, he will spend some of the, I'm sure some of the game going in a bit closer to the goal will withdraw, but like, what is that a reflection on how Tipperary are dealing with him? Like, if you had an option to put him in a position that he's going to best affect the game regardless of other factors, where would that be, and how do you expect that to play out, I suppose, over the course of Sunday?
Where we were putting TJ, is it? I don't think Tip will bow to anyone. I don't think they'll put anyone in on TJ. I think they're just going to say, lads, we've 6 backs good enough to beat your Kilkenny forwards, and we're going to take you on. We're backing down from no one. That's Sheedy's kind of that's his mantra. So it'd be different if it was kind of a small little fast lad. You could imagine Brendan Maher going over him. I don't think Brendan Maher would be suitable to TJ. I think Pádraig Maher is the guy they're going to trust, because he's just as big, just as committed, just as strong in the air, and I think they will depend on Pádraig Maher there with help from Noel midfield. I tried to watch Noel closely in the last couple of matches that I've seen him, and he tends to spend a lot of his time, albeit he can make the odd run forward, he does spend a lot of time tracking back, helping out, because he has that game sense. He some players just know where the ball is going to be. So I think Noel Maher will be there helping out, or Noel McGrath, so I think it's going to be a joint effort between the midfielders and Pádraig Maher to pick up TJ. Where I'd leave TJ centre forward. Definitely. Now, if it's a 6-on-6, so if it is kind of just fairly open, I wouldn't mind seeing TJ going in the edge of the square.
Right.
Yeah. 2014 final, we were in trouble in the first day, and TJ, I think it was the first day, TJ got a ball around 25 yards out and just absolutely rifled the net. So he's so good close to goal. It would be an option, and I would like to see him in there for a couple of minutes.
If you're a Kilkenny back this week, what's the best piece of advice you'd give yourself going up against this bunch of class Tipperary forwards?
I'd say a sweeper. Could you bring back a sweeper? No, I'd say just all in it together. Try and be kind of close to each other for moral support more than anything else. But I think you can defend that Tipperary. We tried to man mark these guys in 2016 as regards going man for man, half back line follow them out the field, and we all seen what happened after that. Like the full back line, you know, the probably felt the brunt of the criticism and that, but you know, the best back in Ireland wouldn't have marked that Tipperary forward line that day with the ball they were getting. Now there was two fronts to it. The Tipperary half back line, if they're coming out with the ball unchallenged and even get 2 seconds to look up, then the runs are being made inside and the boys only need a yard, suddenly they're gone ball over the bar. So two things need to happen. The half back line in midfield and full back line, they all need to work as one unit, and the forwards need to just delay him. And you might see your man clearing the ball in the half forward line, or even, you know, cornerbacks are coming up nowadays clearing ball. Even if you're getting in his way and he clears it 100 yards down the field, that's okay. The last thing you want to do is him getting up, not feeling any pressure behind him, and just a lovely little ball into the corner. So the only way to mark this Tipperary forward line, because I think they are the best forward line in the country as regards talent, Sheedy's work rate added to that, and the only way to mark them is delay the clearances, even if it's for a second, and work together.
So this is as much up to the Kilkenny forwards as anybody else?
Yeah, well, jointly, because there's no point then they doing that if the Kilkenny half back line are gone way out the field and the space is there. So I think it's a joint effort.
It's a massive day for Hugh Lawler, because you mentioned 2016 and we saw what Seamus Callanan did. On a one-to-one battle, is it sort of the flip side of what you were talking about when it comes to Tipperary's backline, that it is just a joint effort, or is there a man-to-man sort of great performance in Hugh Lawler this weekend? Because we know he has it. He was brilliant in the last couple of games. Yeah,
and I suppose we see him with the penalty that he gave away the last day. He goes for the ball. So he's not hanging back. He's not trying to play the man. He goes for the ball. And I think that's the only way to play Callanan. You give Callanan the ball, he's just too strong, too fast, too good. You give him the ball, it's going to be a score. So my belief in Hugh Lawler is stay doing what you're doing, stay attacking that ball, stay winning that ball, keep the ball out of Callanan's hand, and if the half forward line and the Kilkenny midfielders and full forward line are doing their job in delaying the ball, well, it's going to come up and it's going to be a 50-50 ball then, and off you go, and it's not going to be a lovely little spray pass into the corners. So for Hugh Lawler, I think it's a massive challenge for a youngster. But sure, what other way would you want it? Like if he comes out marking Callanan, who's in the run for hurler of the year, has scored a goal in every game this year, he's nearly at the top of the all-time scoring charts in the history of the game. Like, what better challenge have you? And Lawler, he has a good club man beside him there, Paddy Deegan, he's more the warrior, like he's more the lad that gets in lads' faces. So he has plenty of backup there, and I'm sure that they'll be having chats there during the week.
He's a bit of road to catch, and Nicky Rackard actually almost talking about earlier on the goals. It's phenomenal. Was it 59 he is?
Yeah, Rackard's on 59 and he will go level with Kerr on 35 this weekend if he scores one.
Right.
Ridiculous.
That's an amazing. I'd love to see his goals per game ratio if he scored 59.
That's what we were saying, because like 3 or 4 games a year, like championship wise, bloody incredible.
It's absolutely crazy.
There's so many fascinating matchups in it, and like the goalkeepers is obviously another aspect to it. And Eoin Murphy, from a Kilkenny point of view, like it seems, listening to people over the last couple of days who know about these things, David Herity being one of them, talking about maybe certainly being the best goalkeeper there at the minute, but maybe in the conversation for the greatest of all time, Eoin Murphy, which is quite the accolade when you consider the contemporaries that he would have had over the years. Like his importance to that Kilkenny team, almost like in a Cluxton to Dublin way, or a Allison to Liverpool, sort of pulling a lot of the strings there.
Yeah, incredible. He showed his worth last year against Limerick. So like you can talk about intensity and you can talk about work rate and you can talk about all these things, but that's only part of it. you have to have brilliant players along with it to be able to win these titles and to be able to compete with the best teams. You go back to last year against Limerick when Kilkenny nearly snuck it in the quarter-final down Thurles, and he made about 4 unbelievable saves. And it's that kind of thing, along with the work rate, keeps you with it. So you need both. So I think Eoin Murphy over the last couple of years has done more for the belief than anyone else on this kind. Well, TJ himself and TJ, I suppose, but Eoin Murphy has just, his saves, it's like scoring a point or scoring a goal. There's a forward going in on goal, game over, suddenly he pulls off this remarkable save. The All-Ireland semi-final a couple of years ago, he caught Pádraig O'Mahony's free over the crossbar. Most goalies, listen,
let it off.
I don't want to be dropping this down next minute goal. We've seen, Eamon Taft got a 95 All-Ireland ball, drop down, buried ball in the back of the net, Clare go on and win the All-Ireland. Eoin Murphy tap it over, knowing it's Anton. No, caught the ball over the bar, out he goes. So he's able to do it all. His long range frees, probably haven't seen a whole lot of it this year, but in the last couple of years scores huge amount. And so he's definitely earned his right to be named. But he's a long way to go because he's still only a young chap. I played in the hurling for cancer game the other night in Newbridge, Jim Bulger's fundraiser and Davy Russell's. And Brendan Cummins and Damien Fitzhenry were on the goals, and anyone that was, I think there was 6,000 at the game, and they gave the 2 greatest performances.
Really? Yeah. Wow.
And I don't know, is Cummins still hurling? He was brilliant.
Did he play out the field as well, Cummins?
He did, for his club, and played outfield football as well. Yeah. He's kind of an all-rounder. I'd say he's probably good at whatever sport. Yeah. But Fitzhenry, I've seen Fitzhenry playing since I've seen him since he was with that great Wexford team in '96, and then I played Railway Cup with him, and then I played this cancer game with him a couple of years. I have never seen anyone better than Fitzhenry.
Right.
I don't think he's hurled in something like 6 years, and he's still point blank saving everything. And I said to Taggy Fogarty for the game, I said, Taggy, when you go in on goal, just tap the ball over the bar. Don't go for a goal. And this is only a kind of an exhibition game, if you like. Taggy wouldn't listen to me, no, because Taggy be thick and he'd be stubborn and he'd want to prove a lad wrong. So he went for a goal every time. Fitzhenry saved everyone, and I said to Taggy, you're still not listening to me, Taggy.
He probably thought you were trying to wind him up to actually go for a goal.
He probably did, and the only thing that bet him that day was Horgan. So Horgan was playing Patrick Horgan, and he had seemed incredibly safe, and it wasn't just from Taggy, he was saving him from everyone. And Horgan got the ball about 21 yards out, and he looked and he said, listen, there's no point in just driving this. There's only one place, probably 4 places that I'm going to beat Fitzhenry. Either the top corners or either the bottom corners. Top left-hand corner every time. 3 goals. And that was the only time you were going to beat Fitzhenry. And near the end of the game then, the ball, we kind of got a free. Fitzhenry, or Patrick Horgan took it. And we were getting maybe, I think, a pint or 2 pints. So if Horgan got this, he was, we won. So I was on Davy Russell's team, and there was about 10 of them on the goal, if not 20, and an absolute bullet. And there was loads of bodies there. Next minute there was a bit of pulling going on because, lads get competitive, and Fitzhenry got a right few belts, still came out with the ball. Oh. So brave as a lion. Yeah. I think there could have been 15 brothers in it. I don't know exactly, but, I'd say he was reared the right way, and made of good stuff. And so just, it's just, you're talking about the greatest goalies. If Murphy stays going, he'll earn the right to be up there with guys like Cummins and Fitzhenry, but fair play to him.
Are you obliged to call it for Kilkenny? Does that come with the passport, 9 stamps on the passport?
Yeah, I always do. I always back him. But this year I'm going to go a little bit different. I think it's a draw. Yeah, I think it's going to be a draw. I just think there's nothing to separate them. If you go speed, I was trying to look at it and see where it's going to be won or lost. Speed, fitness, I don't think there's any difference. Character and the ability to dig in and the ability to come back, I don't think this year there's any difference between the 2 teams. I think it's going to come down to regards, to simple terms, the skill of it, the hooks, the blocks, winning that ball, who's going to be able to, when they get the chance, take it. We've seen Limerick in the semi-final, unknown to them, they haven't done it before. They missed the 7 or 8 wides, which they usually put over the bar. And I think skill-wise, there's not really any difference either. So when you average out to 1 to 15, so I think it's going to be a draw.
Who's going to win the replay?
Kilkenny.
There wasn't even a beat. Brilliant. Well, listen, enjoy the game anyway. I'm sure you're. Do you? I'm sure you do. It's like it's 2014. You retired. 14. So there was 15 where they won, 16 where they were beaten, and then a bit of quite a drought. But this is the first time back since then, obviously. So.
Like I was actually for 2015 All-Ireland, I was in a corporate box.
All right.
And I didn't enjoy that experience, put it that way, because you kind of only go out to watch the match.
Yeah.
You don't see the warm-ups. You don't
soak it up as much.
You don't soak it up really as much. So that was a different type of experience. I think the last week, when you walk away from it, you don't really become involved as a fan for a couple of years.
Right.
As regards if they win or lose, you're not really moved by either.
Right.
You're delighted, and I had a brother, so you're kind of more involved that way. But regards otherwise, you're not really. It's nearly like being a sub. When you're a sub, you're not as kind of
a bit detached from it.
You are a little bit detached. And I was talking to JJ the other day, and a few of the lads, and we were just saying that. Jackie as well. We're saying the last day was a bit different. The Cork day, I think it was the first time you really felt back the bit of excitement and the nerves and affected by winning or losing the game. And we were over the moon after the semi-final. So it was nice. It's a good feeling. Yeah, because like nobody likes the nerves or that before a game. But like I was a sub in my last year, so I realised I'd love to have the nerves like again, and it's the same as a fan. Then it's actually lovely to have the bit of tingle before a match and the feeling that what's going to happen if we win, what's going to happen if we lose. So we're kind of starting to get back on the fan bandwagon as such. So looking forward to it now.
Yeah, I'm sure when your crew grow up as well, you'll be back with all those nerves. I've absolutely no doubt about that, given the genealogy. One comment to read here before we let you away, Tommy. This is from Kinvara FM's Extra Time show. A nice plug for them in Galway. Whoever got Tommy Walsh into the setup deserves a serious pay rise. As a hurling fan, this last 20 minutes has been a fascinating insight into the All-Ireland, a pure natural analysis. I could listen all day.
Yeah, well, sure, listen, it's all in my book. I'm only reading what's in the book.
That. I think it was Nathan, actually, who made the first call to you, so, we must...
Yeah, it was actually
I think it was Dave McIntyre.
Was it McIntyre?
It was Dave, yeah. It was a lucky one, because... for myself now, because I enjoy the match days now. I would have been totally probably against the media as such, like, as in never saw getting involved, but... It was an interview with JJ and Taggy, just looking back on our times, and we had a great crack on it. So it kind of just started really a little bit of that, but
Listen, we're delighted to have you, and we look forward to getting your thoughts this weekend as well. And thanks a million for coming into us this morning. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Right, it is 8:42 on this Friday morning. Plenty of comments coming in. We're going to bring them your way shortly, but before all of that, we have the very first of our One Tough Job series with Dove. We caught up with Peter O'Mahony, the Ireland and Munster back row, about the dual role that he plays, being a dad and, of course, one of Ireland's greats. So stay tuned to our social channels and the OTB Sports Radio as well for the other parts in our series. It'll be coming your way over the next couple of weeks. Find out how some of the country's most celebrated professionals manage to care for every position. Part 2 is going to be Andrew Porter and his dad Ernie. But for now, here's myself and Quinny with Peter O'Mahony. So look, we're here to talk to Peter O'Mahony, and he's happily opened up his home for us today to come in and have a conversation with him. It's obviously one of the things we want to talk about is one tough job, and he has a couple of tough jobs as it turns out. But we're really looking forward to having the conversation with him.
Yeah, it's nice to people see the sports person in general, and then we're lucky he's opening his home for us. We get in and see the other responsibilities of being a dad, looking after Jess and the kids, and I'm looking forward to seeing inside his home and him taking the mask off, if you like, as the warrior.
We talk about one tough job and caring for every position. You've mentioned the rugby player, you've mentioned the family man, you haven't even mentioned the garden yet.
Yeah, the garden is something he's passionate about, and it's his way of switching off, and I think that's probably key for sports people, finding something that they enjoy doing and being able to switch off. And I'm sure his gardening is limited at the moment because he's stuck in the hard part of being a rugby player pre-season. Let's go in a
Let's
meeting.
go in and have a chat. Please home now, Quinny. Peter, how are you doing? Adrian, thanks for having me.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Thanks a million for inviting us into your unbelievably beautiful home today. Myself and Quinny are thrilled to be here. Quinny, particularly.
Absolutely, yeah. I love the house. Snooping everywhere, yeah.
There's a bit of a Dermot Bannon in there somewhere.
There is, yeah, for sure.
Looking to get out. Thanks a million for inviting us in. It's a beautiful place. You've done wonders with it, and we're going to go out a bit later on to take a look at your gorgeous garden as well, that you're now famed for.
I don't know about that.
I was looking at it in terms of the overlap between you. There wasn't much, was there?
I got my first cap. Quinny came off, I went on.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
So we played Ulster in Ravenhill. Quinny was just about to be yellow carded, I think, so they hauled him off and stuck me on.
That wouldn't have been an irregular occurrence, I suppose.
No.
We spoke a minute ago about, looking back. What was that like for you, the first Irish cap?
International rugby is pretty much about being uncomfortable, isn't it? It's just so difficult. I don't think it's gotten easier either, even from the first one. The stress. The stress levels are different level again when it comes to international rugby, and it certainly hasn't gotten any easier. Again, every game is,
When you say stress, more pressure.
Nerves and pressure, yeah. And I remember my mum meeting my old fella before the game, the Shelburne, and I was sick with nerves, like white as a sheet. I was in a bad place, like.
There's something he said before you captained the Lions in New Zealand in 2017. You know what I'm going to say, do you?
I don't know. I don't even want to know if I want to. Jeez.
It was a great line. He said, whatever aspiration you have for your children, you just hope it works out for them. There's such unbelievable wisdom for me in a quote. Like when you boil everything else away, actually that's really all it ever comes back to. I just thought it was an excellent thing to say.
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, I thought it was going to be outlandish, but it's very valid. Obviously, being a dad now as well. If everything went well for him now, you'd be delighted, regardless of where they get to. You know what I mean? It's a very sensible thing for him to say.
What's the best thing about being a parent for you?
I've really enjoyed having Indy in the dressing room after games. Whether she'll remember it or not, hopefully I'll be around for a few more years to keep bringing her into some special dressing rooms like that. That's my favourite part of rugby, bar touring, being in a dressing room after a big win. You know what I mean? And it's 15 minutes before you have to go into media, and you can chill out with everyone and chat and have a beer or say nothing and have a beer, or all the smallies come in and play in the corner or whatever. That's my favourite part.
And they're the moments that make it feel like it's
worthwhile. Like yeah, it's brilliant.
They're the moments you can look around and feel really part of a tight-knit group who've been up, down, whatever which way.
I've been through all of it. Yeah, it's great.
Look, we mentioned at the top one of the things that you love to do to kind of de-stress a bit and get the fingers green and sort of get stuck in is to do a bit of gardening. I think anybody who follows you on Instagram will have seen a bit of that. So will you take us out and show us around and talk us through the garden, what's going on?
No problem.
I'm intrigued by this.
The three passions, obviously, the rugby, the gardening and the family as well, in terms of one tough job. What's the toughest?
Toughest is definitely the smallies in the house, and look, it's
the most important, probably.
It's definitely the most important, obviously, but it's certainly easier for me. So, you know what I mean? I'm not as hands-on as Jess, but even when I come back, it's definitely the hardest thing. But it's definitely the most rewarding thing at the same time. It's nice mixing both. Come out here with the smallies, giving them an area that they can play around in, and we can garden together, or they can make a mess of it.
Yeah, great.
And thank you so much for chatting to us, and good luck for the next few months.
Thanks for having us. Best of luck for the year. Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's 10 to 9 on this Friday morning. That was our chat with Peter O'Mahony as part of the One Tough Job series with Dove. Plenty more coming your way. You can catch that piece again on all of our social channels, and also Andrew Porter will be coming up over the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. An interesting guy with an amazing gaff, it turns out, Peter O'Mahony.
Yeah, I'm just laughing at the fact that I've got a full cup of coffee in front of me here, which was Tommy Walsh's, which he did not touch one sip of because he was too busy getting too excited about this weekend.
Class.
Yeah, he's as good as it comes when it comes to listening to somebody who's passionate about their sport. He
was saying as well about he's just the Electric Ireland minor game, obviously he's looking forward to as well, Galway against Kilkenny, so
I'm sure he's tipping Kilkenny for that one.
I think he's calling a draw, right?
It's quite the weekend though from Galway's perspective as well, going for the 3 in a row. Like this is like they've done amazing things at underage hurling before in the past, but this seems like an incredibly special group. But it will be typical Kilkenny to spoil the party and get the day started. I would not be surprised whatsoever if we've got a Kilkenny minor senior double at all on Sunday afternoon.
And the thing is that, like, when Kilkenny were being written off, like the era is done now, the Cody era is done over the last few years, and like this is, they're never getting back there again. Like we've just been talking about Adrian Mullen maybe being the young player of the year, and then we're looking at Kilkenny being in the minor final. Like it's whatever about them being done, like they're back in a bloody significant way, and the minors obviously evidence of that, so plenty of coverage of all that over the weekend. One comment here on YouTube, we were talking about where Brian Cody's position is in the pantheon of great managers. Cody has probably, like Ferguson now, earned the right to decide when he goes. I think he will. Like, I think if Kilkenny were to vastly underachieve over the next 3 years, which is unlikely, like, it'd be a bonker situation that the county board will get in touch to say, listen, Brian, I think your time is done.
Brian Cody hasn't got to where he's been by having an absolutely gigantic ego or having an inflated sense of self. I'd say there's a huge sense of humility around what Brian Cody has done in terms of going at this every single year with the same amount of vigour as he's done the previous year, even when they've won that All-Ireland. So that is a man who knows when his time is up, when either A, he's lost his passion for it, or B, he feels that he isn't capable of giving his all to the cause for Kilkenny. He not only deserves that time, Brian Cody is the best person to make that decision. He's one of the best decision makers in Ireland. Look, Walter Walsh, starting that All-Ireland a couple of years ago, turned out to be one of the greatest decisions we've ever seen in an All-Ireland final. He has made massive calls that have invariably worked out in the past. I think he can make the call about his own future pretty well as well.
He'd probably have that self-awareness, like if he can be that ruthless with inevitably his like backroom staff over the last 20 years and the amount of players he's been utterly ruthless with, I'm sure that when it comes to himself, like you can't be that ruthless with everybody around you and then also look at yourself and go,
exactly,
everything's fine, Brian, there's nothing to worry about here. But anyway, I don't see any sign of that happening anytime soon. Right, we're going to move tack from GAA to rugby, so do get your comments in on that. We've obviously got the first of the World Cup warm-up games under our belt, Italy last weekend, and the lads were talking to Emmett Byrne, and unbelievable watch if you're a rugby nut. You really will want to watch that with Emmett Byrne during the week about how to play prop. Essentially, was a short story in that and the depth chart. And so we're moving on to the second row now. I'm delighted to say that Mike McCarthy joins us on the line. Morning to you, Mike.
Morning, guys. Thanks very much. How you doing?
Flying it, thanks very much. Yeah, so the squad is down to 40 now, and there's another 9 to be culled. And I was interested to get your thoughts from the off, because you were obviously one of those players who, pre-2015, at some point or another, the conversation was had. I don't know how that takes place. That you weren't going to be part of the initial travelling party. How was that for you, and how did that all come about at the time?
Yeah, it's a pretty horrible feeling, to be honest, and it takes a while to get over it. 2011, I did the whole pre-season. I think all 5-6 weeks of it. Absolutely flogged myself, trained really well, and then got called into a little meeting room in Carton House on the middle floor. I remember that feeling going up in the lift, like waiting to go and see the headmaster, and then you go in and you can just kind of tell from their body language, you get the sense that you're not going. So you just don't really know what to say. It's very hard to take, and you just kind of think all that work that's gone in, and it is tough to pick yourself up, but you have to. It happened to Scanlon and Alton Delan there a few weeks ago, but you have to pick yourself up and you have to be ready, because there will be injuries and there's a chance those guys can go, because back to 2004 to 2015, then I did none of the pre-season, which I was hugely disappointed not to be in the squad, and then I ended up getting called out when Paul O'Connell had that horrific hamstring injury. So these guys that aren't, I've been told they're not going, they have got a good chance of getting a call out to the squad.
Did you know when you were on the way up in the lift what was coming?
I think I did, yeah, you get the sense. So, yeah, you get the sense. You're always overthinking things, analysing things, and you're having little chats with your teammates. You're having little chamomile teas before bed, saying, who's going, and having a little conversation. So I think everyone, especially with this World Cup and the squad getting culled week by week, it's everyone's having those conversations and everyone's overthinking about it. So, but I think it's great they've gone to Portugal. It'll give them a chance to refocus, get out of Carton House, and have a bit of sun. And it's a change of focus, change of scenery, which will be massively important when they're in the same place. They've been in the same place for so long.
How did they deliver that news?
Of you not going to the squad or going to Portugal?
Yeah, no, not being in the squad.
Well, they just, like I said, they just call you up to the meeting room in Carton House. That's how I got told.
And what was the conversation like?
If you're not in camp, it's just a phone call, and you see Joe Schmidt's name come up on the phone, and I've been there plenty of times, so it's not good news, and you kind of try and work out before the call comes in a few questions that you want to ask, but you never really get across what you want to ask as to. And you always come off the phone frustrated, thinking, "Oh, why didn't I ask this? Should have asked that." But as I said, it's tough to take, but you've got to pick yourself up.
And ultimately, it's like appealing a yellow card to a referee. It's like you ain't changing his mind one way or the other, right? Like it's you've got to try and establish, I suppose, in his mind that, listen, I'm annoyed about it, I'm frustrated, I want to be involved, but ultimately there's nothing you can do to impact the ultimate decision.
Yeah, exactly. Certain lads will have a certain amount of credits from what they've achieved with the coaches in the past, and sometimes that can be frustrating. But I think as a player, you always probably think you're better than you actually are, and I've maybe realised after I finished up. But you always think you should be going. You always think you should be number one, and just everyone's so competitive, and it is really hard to take. It's one of the hardest things to take. Being told you're not going to a World Cup. It's a dream for some people to go to one World Cup, and to get the knockback. It's an incredibly hard time.
You're going to take us through your depth chart in just a second, but so you mentioned Ulster Delan. He's obviously gone now, and so there are 5 locks left. So Ryan, Toner, Henderson, Klein and Byrne. I think he took 4 locks in 2015, and obviously swapped yourself and Paul O'Connell out when he was injured at that point. Does he take all 5 this time? Obviously, some of them can cover different positions.
Yeah, I think he'll take 4. But I mentioned last time that the strength and depth we've got since 2015. When you look at some of the guys that aren't going, Alton Delan, Quinn Rue, Gav Thornbury, Ross Maloney, the depth we've got now is absolutely incredible. But talking of the guys we have got, I think he'll take 4. And the big talking point is who goes between Tadhg Beirne and John Klein. Now, for me, if it's a pool stage game, I'd like to see Tadhg Beirne coming off the bench and doing what he did against Italy. I think he got 2 turnovers in pretty much 60 seconds. That can be a huge turning point for a team in the pressure cooker of the World Cup. If you're losing by 2 points and Tadhg comes on and has that impact, gets a couple of turnovers, it can change a game. If you're winning by a couple of points, it can be a massive pressure release if he comes on and gets a couple of points. But if it's a quarter-final against South Africa, then maybe I'd like to see Jean Klein starting. In the Six Nations, maybe one area we lacked those games was Wales and England, where we lacked a bit of physicality, we weren't winning the collision, and he's a guy who can completely change that. And I thought he had a great game against Italy. While sometimes you watch a game and think, he's not having the same impact as Henderson or James Ryan. He is a completely different player. He does the unseen work, the unseen graft. He's a bit of an Etzebet, an enforcer. He absolutely smashes the rucks. He clears the ball. Those couple of extra inches that those first defenders at the breakdown have to sit back. It makes a huge difference for the scrum half. He's then got an opportunity to snipe and make little breaks. It has a ripple effect, a positive effect on the rest of the team. So that's the big one, is who goes between those two. And for me, I think maybe Joe sees Tadhg more as a 6. Joe's always liked his kind of bigger, heavier, tight head lock going on in the past.
Well, let's have a look at your depth chart then, the 5 locks and how you rate them. James Ryan naturally top of the list with a score of 10. Ian Henderson at 9, Devon Toner at 9. Interestingly, you've rated Tadhg Beirne ahead of John Klein, 8 compared to Klein's 7.5. So you obviously see Tadhg Beirne, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mike, as a better player, but Klein perhaps fits in more to the squad that Joe wants to bring to Japan.
Yeah, just kind of, like I said, if this was based on the pool, I'd have Tadhg Burns ahead of John Klein. If it was a quarter-final against South Africa, I'd have Klein ahead. But for me, the dead set, obviously, James Ryan, I've given him a 10. All those players work incredibly hard, but I suppose James Ryan's like the Terminator. The amount of work he gets through with the tackles and the carries, getting over the gain line, winning those inches when he's running into heavy traffic, often front 5 forward defenders. He gets over the gain line, and that has a positive effect on the team. Hendy's a dead set with what he's achieved, and he's obviously leadership material now, captaining Ulster. And with Dev, we've seen what happens when Dev doesn't play. He is that set piece foundation, and one of the things that people probably don't see is, I say, that unseen work that has a ripple effect, a positive effect on the rest of the team. And, for example, with Dev, that's him standing at the tail of the line out in defence and forcing the opposition to have to throw to the front. That means when the scrum half passes the ball to 10, the ball's in the air a lot longer, and it allows the defence to get their line speed, get up in the attacker's face a lot quicker. So that's an example of a player having a positive effect on the rest of the team by doing some kind of unseen work. And then, so Tadhg coming off the bench, we've talked about his poach threat, his running lines. He runs incredible lines, and they are just two completely different players. And the only question for Tadhg Burn is he's probably the smallest of all the locks we've got. And, I'm not sure if I'm right here. I'm probably wrong, but is the size element a bit of a concern? He got his chance against Wales in the second row, and we lost the physicality stakes there. We lost the collisions, but maybe I think Joe does see him more as a 6. And what we'll get from Klein is that specialist tight head set piece foundation. He's a nuisance, and he'll have he'll match the physicality stakes.
So it sounds, by the way, you're talking there, Mike, if the quarter-final was tomorrow against let's say against the All Blacks, you're starting, obviously, James Ryan, and it sounds like Devin Toner alongside him with Ian Henderson first off the bench.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Dev for that set-piece security, James Ryan and Hendy for that impact off the bench. The likes of him and Sean Cronin coming off the bench is huge and incredible impact. But then if Hendy wasn't there on the bench, then Tadhg Burn can add that. And unfortunately for Klein, sometimes you're just not really an impact player to come off the bench. And we see, not to say Klein's anything like Mike Ross, but myself and Mike Ross, we probably wouldn't add much impact off the bench. We'd be good for 50, 60, 70 minutes. But then sometimes guys don't come into the equation for a bench spot. They're either a starter or they're not. They're not in the squad, and maybe that's the position Klein would be in.
Mike, thanks a million. We'll catch up to you again over the next few weeks.
And of course, Ireland could go number 1 at the weekend.
Yeah.
If Wales beats, if Wales and England draw, and Australia beat New Zealand.
Do we want that?
Thanks. Sorry?
Do we want to be number 1?
Oh yeah, I think of course we do. It'd be
Definitely.
nice for Dev sitting in the side to see there sitting number 1. So.
Come on, take it easy. See it, Mike McCarthy on the line there. The line wasn't great, of course, but we'll no doubt remedy that by the time we get Mike back up again in a couple of weeks' time. The point I'm making, obviously, is that there was all the furore when it happened to us the last time, and it was like, we're not the greatest team in the world. It's 2 years out from the World Cup. There's only one way to prove that we're the greatest team in the world, and there's a lot of guff that comes with the territory that maybe this Ireland team, I don't know, maybe actually in their trajectory of given what's happened earlier in the year, it's exactly what they could do to sort of reboost their confidence.
And also, as well, if we don't win the World Cup, at least we'll have being number 1 in August. It's an interesting one, though, isn't it?
We'll definitely reflect on that.
That 4-lock scenario.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a straight shootout between Tadhg Burn and John Klein.
And there's a case to be made, like a compelling case to be made for both of them.
By the way he was talking at the end there, I'd almost have Tadhg Burn ahead of him on the plane. Although you are crossing your fingers that there aren't any more than one injury, because what you're talking about really is when it matters, an impact sub off the bench. And he said himself that Burn is that better player, but then if you get 2 injuries, if Henderson and James Ryan, or James Ryan and Toner, or any combination of the 3, if 2 of them gets injured before quarter-final, then according to Mike's logic, you'd rather have Klein in the squad. Yeah,
there's at some point from which you can still call a player in, obviously, and that was how Mike McCarthy benefited. So I think it's highly likely that actually both of them are going to see some World Cup game at some point or another. Plenty of comments coming in, by the way. Darren on YouTube saying those personal pieces like that bit with O'Mahony is what gives such a powerful sense of the fact these heroes of ours are human too, in all the best ways. Thanks, folks. He says, Pascal says, with Carby able to cover most of the back line and Byrne able to play in the back row, would a 6-2 split in the subs be an option if Ireland were facing South Africa in a quarter-final? Bit of an Eddie Jones move there. Unlikely, but I mean, Rackard scored 7-7. This is Owen Whelan on Facebook. Rackard scored 7-7 in a semi-final against Antrim in 1951, I think.
See, I'd forgotten about that because of everything else that happened in 1951.
James Martin says it's only the second test of 5, Adrian. Another month of the Ashes after this week. He quite rightly calls me out.
Adrian Barry trying to cancel the Ashes, the most historical sporting event in the world.
Tom McKevitt says very disrespectful towards Kieran Whelan. Give the bitterness a rest, Owen. I can't even.
I'm not sure it's disrespectful. I just said it was the most unoriginal take that there is.
And Alvin Soden on Facebook says, "What's with lately always having the football on after 9 o'clock at the end of the programme, ? Friday, and it's put to the end of the show." Thanks.
He's totally right, because it's such a short season and we'll never get the opportunity to leave in football.
We are turning to football, and are we going straight there, Joe? We're going to take a quick ad break and we're with Nathan and Phil after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
I hear you some wiring needs a fixing, ma'am. The name's Buzz, on account of my work.
No chance.
Not all cowboys ride horses. All safe electric registered electrical contractors must give you a certificate of completion that shows their work meets approved standards. Find one nearby on safeelectric.ie.
How could a KBC personal loan make a difference to you? Make a difference to your... Make a difference to your... Make a difference to your... Or make a difference to your... Apply for a personal loan with KBC to find out how we can make a difference to you and your pocket. KBC, the bank of you. Lending criteria, underwriting, terms and conditions apply. KBC Bank Ireland plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
Right, almost 7 minutes past 9 this Friday morning. Myself and Owen with you. And Nathan Murphy, come on in.
How are we? Good morning.
Was there any truth to the scurrilous rumours that you were trying to use your credentials to get free access to Shamrock Rovers the other night?
No, absolutely nothing in that. I slammed Dan McDonnell after we went off air.
Physically?
I had 2 tickets and I needed 3, was the problem.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
Well, the problem was I had 2 tickets for one stand that was sold out. So the option was let the 6-year-old go off by himself to the other stand and take my nice seats, or I did, the charitable thing for my family and we all sat together.
The charitable thing for your children. Well done.
It's kind of as charitable as sitting in the cheap seats last Saturday night in Cork Park.
Oh, wow. Well, listen, I just want to go and support my county and be around my own people. Nobody asked me to go in a nice corporate box and like Adrian Barry there.
Oh, were you in a corporate box?
Anyway, let's move on. Somebody once said to me, and there was a very wise person, when you're explaining you're losing, Nathan. So,
For sure.
Talk some football?
Let's talk some football. What game are you at this weekend?
I'm not at a game this weekend.
Ah.
I am. Dave McIntyre is covering Chelsea, Leicester, Stamford Bridge, 4:30 Sunday.
4:30 Sunday. Let's start with Arsenal Burnley because it's the first game of the weekend, and resurgent Arsenal. It looks like Ozil and Kolasinac are back. They're traditionally poor starters, so they're Burnley tomorrow at half 12. Traditionally poor starters. I think it's the first time in a long time they might actually win back-to-back games here and look likely to do it.
Well, it's very hard to know because last weekend they started with almost all of their new signings on the bench. You would assume that they're going to improve Arsenal when they come into this side. But it means that actually, as Unai Emery starts to integrate them, what we saw last week is probably going to be very different to what we see tomorrow. They've generally struggled against Burnley over the last couple of years. They get a win, 93rd, 94th minute, grind them down. There's been a lot of controversy in this fixture. And Burnley will be absolutely buzzing, obviously, after their victory last week. They didn't play particularly well in that game, Burnley. It was one of those, the wind was a gale force wind, and they took advantage of it. They played it very well. Ashley Barnes got his couple of goals. I still think with Arsenal, because it's so early in the season, we've seen little or nothing of these new signings, that there's probably going to be a bit of time of them having to bed in, and Burnley are a very solid, settled side that can maybe take advantage of that.
I wonder, Nathan, are Arsenal a little bit caught between two stools here? Because initially I was unbelievably excited when the money gets spent at the end of the summer, and then you kind of look at the age profile of the team that played last week. Obviously the likes of Joe Willock and Reece Nelson, and I think it was 3 teenagers in the starting team last week for Arsenal. And I wonder if they're looking at what's happened to some of their young talent that they've allowed to leave, like Ren Adelaide tearing it up for Angers at the moment, and the Serge Gnabry situation obviously very highly publicised. That I wonder if Arsenal are looking around at their kids and saying to themselves, God, we need to give these people more of a chance in the first team. But at the same time, they've just broken their club transfer record.
Yeah, and they never gave any of those players really a chance that you've just mentioned. And they've let another young player, Alex Iwobi, leave the club. It was the first day of the season. The players weren't ready, so they went with the kids, and the kids did all right. But you would assume that as players become fit and available, if Ozil is back, if Pepe is ready to start, that those teenagers will drop out again and will be more at the impact off the bench. And we'll probably flip, and in a week's time we'll be looking at the depth in the Arsenal squad, whereas a week ago you're looking at that bench against Newcastle and think, wow, the options that they have there. In a couple of weeks' time, once those 3 or 4 players are starting, and it's the 3-4 teenagers that are brought out of the side, you'd probably question the same thing. The biggest decision I think Unai Emery faces is what he does with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. 22 goals last season, joint top scorer in the Premier League, but generally was played out in the left wing last season with Alexandre Lacazette played through the middle. I think Aubameyang is such a talent. He's one of the most exciting players to watch in the league. There's just beautiful deft touches when he's in and around the area, and he's clinical. Whereas Lacazette, even though he's scored a lot of goals, you just feel doesn't have the all-round talent of Aubameyang. So maybe does he sacrifice Lacazette and he's that option off the bench with half an hour to go, and you play Aubameyang straight down the middle with all these new signings? My preference would be Aubameyang straight down the middle rather than stuck out in the left, where often he just sort of fades out of games.
Southampton-Liverpool is another game we want to talk about. 3 o'clock on Saturday. Andy Hunter in The Guardian this morning is making the point about maybe all is not quite as rosy at Liverpool as everybody's painting. Adrian's busy workload a danger sign for Liverpool, specifically that they've faced 40 shots in the first 3 games of this campaign. In the first 3 games of last season it was 19, and he does talk about the additional 30 minutes of extra time to factor into that. But
and City and Chelsea. Fairly easy start to last season as far as I recall. That's
reasonable. And you were talking to John Giles last night, Nathan, about something roughly related to this?
Yeah, a lot of the question marks about Liverpool have been this incredibly high line that they're playing, and whether it's a high line to press up further the pitch or whether it's a sort of offside track, because it's felt watching them at times that it is an offside track, that the defenders, the centre halves, don't track the runners. So that when Timo Pukki was making those runs for Norwich last Friday night, they literally just stepped up and let him in behind. Van Dijk didn't follow him. Joe Gomez didn't follow him. It seems incredibly risky and I can't imagine this is what they're trying to do, to play an offside trap up towards the halfway line. I was making the point that maybe with VAR, because decisions are always right now, that actually if your offside trap is perfect, if you have everybody in the exact same wavelength, that you're going to be okay, because the decision will always go in your favour. I suspect they are trying to play something more of a high line to push everybody up. We'll have Damien Delaney on the show tomorrow afternoon. I was chatting to him about it, what he thinks. And he was comparing it to what Tottenham have done over the last couple of years, that Tottenham quite often defend on the halfway line. And the reason for that is that it is that Jurgen Klopp gegenpress that he first had when he came in, was that the front 3, the midfield 3 are pressing, and that all the opposition can do is hoof it up. So then your centre half is picking it up in the halfway line. He takes 2 steps forward. The opposition team is on the back foot again. But it means that everybody has to be absolutely on it of that front 6. So the centre backs get no time in the ball. The midfielders get no time in the ball. And all they're doing is playing aimless balls forward that are easy for the defenders to deal with. But from what we've seen from Liverpool so far, they're stepping off opposition midfields. They're letting them play through balls. And then they're just standing statuesque and letting defenders run in behind them. You just can't imagine that this is what Jurgen Klopp wants the players to do. So clearly there's some breakdown at the moment. The other thing that style should see, and maybe this is where they would miss Alisson, is that the goalkeeper, I think, if you're playing that very high line, like Hugo Lloris would with Tottenham, generally when the ball's in the opposition half of the pitch, they're standing outside their penalty area. So they're almost acting as the sweeper. They're pushing right up. So if the ball does go over the top, they're the one that's clearing it. And I'm not sure that Adrian has that in his locker.
Is this the manifestation, Phil? Good morning to you, welcome, of the hangover that has been discussed from last season?
No, I think I'd agree with what Nathan said. I think the midfield is the problem at the moment, the unit, that they're not getting close enough to opposition players. I saw it the other night with Chelsea. They'd time. Jorginho had a lot of time to spray balls left and right, and that ball to Pulisic was on. Luckily for Liverpool, the ball to Giroud was on, but Giroud doesn't have the pace that would expose Liverpool if they play that high line. So he clearly wants to play the high line and squeeze the opposition. And there was so many times watching them the other night, he can see them, and they, in fairness, they do move in a line. So there's the discipline there. It does take the odd lapse in concentration for it to all break down, and it can make you look quite foolish. But the midfield unit would be a little bit of a concern. I don't know what midfield three he's going to go with tomorrow, because although Fabinho scored a penalty, he was knackered by the end of the game. He could barely walk off the pitch, which made his penalty even more impressive. Oxlade-Chamberlain is an option. He obviously played in the front three. That didn't really work, but you have to remember he hadn't started a game for over 400 days, so he is only just coming back into it. Naby Keita, again, was a player that we're all looking to see. Can he be the player that they thought they were signing? We saw glimpses last season, but he picked up a knock before the game against Chelsea. So you're looking at Jordan Henderson. Wijnaldum will play, I'd imagine. James Milner came off, he had an ice pack on his knee, but you know, he'd probably play through the pain barrier. So you'd be slightly concerned for Liverpool going to Southampton tomorrow. They had trouble in that game last season. Obviously there was more pressure on it, but you know you can't drop points. And Liverpool didn't drop points against teams in the bottom half last season. So it would be a bit of not a disaster, but just wouldn't be a great message to send out, dropping points in your second game of the season.
I would say as well, there's a rush to panic around Liverpool at the moment. They've just won the European Super Cup. They started the season in the league
that nobody cares about
against Norwich, where people do care about it.
Jurgen Klopp cares,
but Jurgen Klopp cares. People around Europe,
of course he cares, because they won. He wouldn't give a shit if they lost it.
But they still won it. They were 4-0 up before half time against Norwich, and people are rushing to take the negatives. You flip that. Last season there was a feeling for three-quarters of the season that Liverpool weren't playing very well. Mo Salah's already looked more sharp this season than he did at any stage last season. Likewise, Roberto Firmino, who at times just looked a bit heavy-legged last season. Now, he had no rest at all really during the summer, but has looked at a different level to any stage. And Sadio Mane still has to come back. So it is everything you're talking about at the moment, I think, as a bit of a health warning, because we've seen very little of these teams. We haven't seen Liverpool with their full strength first 11 on the pitch yet. So Southampton away is a game that generally they have struggled with at times, and we were saying on the show last night that if Liverpool play this high line away at Southampton, if only they had a really pacey striker who's caused Liverpool in the past, maybe they could just start tomorrow. So maybe Shane Long, who wasn't in the squad last week for Southampton, gets another run at that Liverpool defence.
Like, is it a case that people are targeting the right side of Liverpool's defence as well? I mean, you look at Pulisic, you look at the way Sané had a very good day, I thought, in the Community Shield. The left-sided players, Trent Alexander-Arnold is what I'm talking about here. It's not a new take whatsoever that he might be suspect going one way. What do you think about that?
No, he's been targeted by particularly Manchester City consistently over the years. They've had a lot of luck down that side. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a strange one to analyse, because clearly defensively he's not maybe at the level of Andy Robertson, but Jurgen Klopp absolutely loves him because he's the best attacking full back probably in the Premier League. Look at the amount of assists he contributed. So Klopp obviously looks at this and thinks, he weighs up, all right, he's going to cause us problems at the back. Maybe he's not as defensively aware as you would want, but when he's on the ball, what he offers Liverpool makes it all worthwhile. So teams are going to target him. And the problem for Liverpool is on the one side they've Van Dijk and Robertson, who are solid and as good as you'll get. On the other, is he quite sure? Is it Gomez or Matip? Matip right now looks like the better option.
But it's got to be Gomez with his extra pace with that high line. If they're playing a high line, is Gomez not a better option there, no?
You would think so, but it didn't work particularly well last week against Norwich when he was there. But he's another player who's just coming back from very long-term injuries, hasn't played a huge amount of football, so maybe there's a bit of rustiness there. I don't think the high line is going to be a talking point in 3 or 4 weeks' time.
Sure, listen, Dave, the big one in the bag anyway, the Premier League is just an afterthought, so, you know, Jurgen Klopp's celebration couldn't have been much more if they'd won the Premier League. City Spurs, Nathan, talk to us. It's obviously two of the main contenders for the Premier League. It's very early to be getting stuck into each other. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking generally this has been an absolutely brilliant game. technically as good as it gets. Two sides who like to get the ball down, pass it around, play at a real pace. It is, in a way, unfortunate it comes so early in the season, particularly for Tottenham. Do they throw in some of the new players? Like Lo Celso, I don't think is fit quite yet. You would like to know who's going to be there. The impact Christian Eriksen made last week off the bench turned the game for them. Can you start him? Like, has anything happened behind the scenes with Real Madrid? What's his mentality like? He's the sort of player against Manchester City you need on the pitch, and I think City will be delighted to have this game so early in the season, because generally it would be one of their trickier ones. They look like they're absolutely motoring. Like some of the play last week against West Ham was just out of this world. So I'm not as excited as I would be if this was in the middle of October, because Spurs right now, as good as Ndombele was last week, it just feels as though it's a little bit too early in the season for them.
I know you've got to get away, so you're calling City obviously on that one. Any other surprises you see? United Wolves, Chelsea Leicester?
United Wolves is going to be a fascinating game, because the question mark over United is in midfield, and they were a mess in midfield, certainly for the first half an hour. There didn't seem to be any idea between the three of them, Pereira, McTominay and Pogba, as to who was playing where. Pogba drop up as the defensive midfielder, he'd pop up as the right side of midfielder, very rarely in that left-sided role that we've become used to seeing him. And of the top 10 sides, certainly top 8, you could definitely argue that Manchester United have the weakest midfield. You look at that Wolves midfield, Ruben Neves and João Moutinho would walk into that Manchester United midfield. They would improve it massively. Wolves rested pretty much everybody last night in the Europa League. Last season, they had an excellent record against the top 6. They started in their opening game against Leicester at the exact same 11 as that started against Liverpool on the final day of last season. So there's no bedding in of players. It's a team and a back three in a shape that they know inside out. And I thought United against Chelsea struggled a lot when they couldn't go on the counter-attack. I think if Wolves drop a little bit deeper, Rashford and Martial just didn't seem to have the trickery or the understanding to get those link-up plays you'd want at the edge of the area. There was a lot of fancy football, and that's something I think Solskjaer is really going to have to get on top of the front four of Pogba, Lingard, Rashford and Martial. Like, in a way, you look at them and think, they're playing like they're out in the streets, that sort of joy. But it's all these fancy flicks in inappropriate places. Sometimes you just need a set game plan, and I think against Wolves, this will give us a better judgment of where Manchester United are. If they can go to Molineux and beat Wolves, well, suddenly you're probably looking at them thinking, all right, they are the best of the rest in that race for the top 4. But I would have Wolves as, without question, as favourites to win this game.
All right, big call, hot take. Nathan, thanks a million.
Is it? All right, lads.
I think it is. Yeah. Good luck.
United didn't beat them. 3 attempts last season. They lost twice at Molineux, one in the FA Cup, and they drew at Old Trafford. So I can see why people would favour Wolves. And Wolves have this excellent record against top 6. Liverpool were the only team in the top 6 that did the double over Wolves last season. So they love these games, and just have to be clever. Don't give United that space to play in behind, and then I think Wolves will be more than capable of getting a result here.
Do you go with Nathan on that City Spurs game?
I think Spurs, I thought Eriksen was excellent when he came on against Villa last week, but I don't know if they'll start him. Whereas you look at the City starting 11 against West Ham, they left Bernardo Silva and Sergio Aguero on the bench. So you'd imagine both those will come in, and Riyad Mahrez and Gabriel Jesus will probably come out, and then you pick your 4-3-3. Rodri looks like he's settled in all right, and De Bruyne looks like he's I think a lot of people have picked him to be player of the year.
He looked good last week, didn't he?
Yeah.
Sane out, and Silva obviously struggling to get back as well. Mahrez had such a good game last week. Is there any sense that he can actually prove himself to be a success at City now and go on and kick on and fill that void almost?
You see, you know how good he is. I mean, they signed him for a reason, but he was a little bit inconsistent last season. I just think if Guardiola wants to get at Tottenham's fullbacks tomorrow, because Walker-Peters is still a little bit unknown. Danny Rose, I mean, we thought he was going to leave in the summer, so you think that he'll play Bernardo Silva on the right, he could play Sterling on the left, and then Aguero down the middle. Now, he could go with Jesus either, but I just think City will have too much for them. There is areas where Spurs might fancy. They could go a little bit direct if they want, because Harry Kane physically would be able for Certainly if he can get himself onto John Stones, he could cause problems. Zinchenko is a strange one in the fact that people look at him as a weakness as the left back, yet he's all the games that he started in the Premier League for Manchester City, they've won them all, which is a pretty incredible record. What is it? It's 23.
It speaks for itself, bloody hell, Jesus. Chelsea-Leicester, there was an interesting conversation, I don't know if you saw it on Sky after the games on Sunday, and they were talking about, I mean, essentially I think they were pointing to some naivety on the part of Frank Lampard, and they were talking about how teams need to be expansive in attack and compact in defence, but actually Chelsea were on the day expansive in defence, and they were saying like this points to some either naivety on the part of Lampard that he hasn't communicated to it, or the players don't seem to understand it, which ultimately probably comes back to his door as well. Like it could be that obviously Frank Lampard is still a rookie manager to all intents and purposes, and he's taken a massive step up in terms of the quality that he's facing week in, week out. So this could be something that's just a bit of a teething issue that nobody discusses again, and Frank Lampard understands and fixes it the next time. Or it could be, which is possible given that he spent an entire career in like elite level dressing rooms, that it is actually naivety on his part.
Yeah, and I think they were a lot better against Liverpool on Wednesday night in the Super Cup, and it's no coincidence that N'Golo Kante was back in and they looked a lot more stable. And I know there was a lot of people saying after the defeat to United it didn't seem like a 4-0 game, but it genuinely, it could have, like, Chelsea could have been ahead before Rashford scored the penalty. It's fine margins, I know. There's a lot of positivity because Lampard has come in and he's playing these youngsters. But if Leicester, who are more than capable of going to Stamford Bridge, they did it last season, Jamie Vardy scored the winner. If they were to go to Stamford Bridge and win, that positivity, it starts to fade away. And Frank Lampard might be a club legend, but, there's only so many times you can say, yeah, he's playing all these kids. But if you haven't won a game in 3 attempts, then people start thinking, is he up to it? And it seems crazy, but
Pep Guardiola would not win the league with his Chelsea team. So Frank Lampard deserves a year to do whatever he wants with his team, and fair play to him for starting with such a young team last week.
I did say Chelsea getting into the top 4 this season will be absolute success and it'll be a huge achievement.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I don't think they will.
And I agree with you. We are extremely excited about this next piece of news that we have in association with Cadbury. We're bringing you another monster Premier League roadshow. It's on September the 4th. Gary Neville among the guests at the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre as they reminisce about his and their playing days and preview the brand new season as well. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited. We're going to have tickets on sale very soon. Stay tuned to the Off the Ball social channels, I would suggest, over the next few hours. offtheball.com/events for all the details there. So stay tuned. It is literally going to be a monster roadshow, and all in association with Cadbury. Now, Phil, you've got a couple of minutes to bring us up to speed.
Yeah.
What's happening?
I'll get through it quickly. I know Kilkenny and Tipperary, you've talked about it in depth with Tommy Walsh, but they're going to name their teams tonight ahead of Sunday's All-Ireland final at Croke Park. Killian Buckley could come back into the Kilkenny team. Tip manager Liam Sheedy is expected to go with the same 15 that started the semi-final win over Wexford. Kerry manager Peter Keane will have Stephen O'Brien available for the All-Ireland football final against Dublin on the 1st of September. He scored the all-important goal against Tyrone on Sunday, a game he was black-carded in. That was his 3rd black card of the season. But the black card he received against Meath in the Super 8s has been rescinded on appeal. Tottenham's teenage striker Troy Parrott could be named the Mick McCarthy's Republic of Ireland squad, which will be named later today for the Euro 2020 qualifier against Switzerland. They also have a friendly against Bulgaria next month. After their exit from the Europa League qualifiers earlier in the week, Dundalk are back in action tonight in the SSE Electricity League Premier Division. They play Finn Harps at Oriel Park at 8 o'clock. At 7:45, second place Shamrock Rovers are away to Derry City. Bohemians take on UCD at Dalymount Park. St Pat's face Sligo Rovers at Richmond Park, and it's Waterford against Cork City at the RSC. Last night, Wolves beat Armenian side FC Punic 4-0 at Molineux to advance to the playoff round of the Europa League. 8-0 in aggregate. Wolves will play Torino next. Next up for Rangers is Legia Warsaw, following their 3-1 win over FC Midtjylland of Denmark at Ibrox. 7-3 overall. Celtic now know they'll face AIK of Sweden in the playoff round. Linfield will play Karabag. Rory McIlroy and Graham McDowell both 3 under after round 1 of the BMW Championship at Medina, which is 4 behind the joint leaders Justin Thomas and Jason Kokrak. Open champion Shane Lowry is level par, and Andy Murray will not be competing in the doubles at the US Open later this month. He's decided not to play, wants to focus on his singles career again. But He is actually in doubles action today in Cincinnati, and he's going up against his brother.
All right.
Yeah, so Andy against Jamie. Second time that they've met in professional tennis and doubles, and it was Jamie who came out on top in Montreal in 2015.
I will be glued to it, Phil. I cannot
Murray
wait.
Mania.
Yeah, Murray on the double. Thanks, William, for that.
No worries.
You going to the hurling at the weekend?
Not yet.
Right.
Yes.
Oof.
You know, read into that what you may.
You're waiting for somebody to sort you with tickets. Owen will be there.
Yeah, got one
on
on the open sale. First time I'll be in the hill since the 2011 All-Ireland football final, so happy memories.
Are you going to Partizan or are you shouting for anyone?
Partizan.
Right.
No, sorry, not chatting for anyone.
Right.
Not chatting for anyone.
Who's you're leaning towards? If you want to see one of them win.
I've heard it's going to be a draw, Adrian.
Yeah, I know it is. And then
I think Kilkenny are going to win.
Right.
Yeah.
Who would you want to win?
Tipperary.
Actually trying to ask you badly.
Probably Tipperary just.
Yeah, right. Very good. Thanks, William.
No, you're very welcome. Honestly, thanks.
Owen's in top sarcastic mood this morning, so we'll have more of that coming your way on Monday morning from 7:30. But that is our lot. Reminder that OTB Sports Radio, always there at OTB.com, offtheball.com, and on the Go Loud app all day, every day. Ronan O'Gara and Brian O'Driscoll, by the way, are going to be in studio today for a mega Friday rugby slot. It's going to be live from 4 o'clock. Do tune in for that. It's on OTB Sports Radio on YouTube as well, and also a radio show live this evening from 7 o'clock. We're here all weekend as well. We've the latest from the All-Ireland final, of course. David McIntyre and Gary Breen are going to be at Leicester Chelsea. That's on Sunday. And if you missed any of this show, you can podcast the full thing at searching OTB AM or watch it back on YouTube. Good morning.